President Zelensky describes the Russian bombing of a maternity hospital as the ultimate proof of genocide against Ukraine.
Good morning. It is 6 o'clock on the 10th of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Live with you right across the UK, across the whole world, on TV, radio and online. Leading the news this morning.
A desperate search for survivors is underway in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol after a maternity hospital was directly hit by Russian rockets. President Zelensky has announced that children are still stuck under the rubble.
All of this comes as American officials raise concerns that Russia could be setting the stage for the use of chemical weapons after Kremlin officials alleged that the US had been supporting a bioweapons program in Ukraine.
And after Ukraine successfully evacuated 35,000 civilians from the besieged Ukrainian cities yesterday, we'll have the latest on the mounting refugee crisis from our reporters on the ground in Hungary and Poland.
Also coming up, the price of petrol soars above £2 a litre as a result of the war. Our reporter is at the country's most expensive petrol pump.
And as always, you can join in any of our discussions. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or get in touch via Twitter @gbnews.
Okay, we're leading with those huge number of civilians which have been fleeing cities across UK and Ukraine. It is the fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since the Second World War.
Let's go to our reporter, Paul Hawkins. He joins us this morning from Hungary, near to the Luzanka border crossing. Very good morning to you, Paul. Look, this is day 14 of the invasion. You've moved from Poland, where you spent several days now, into Hungary. What's the contrast that you're seeing? How is Hungary coping with this influx of people and supporting Ukrainians?
Yeah, morning Isabel, morning Eamonn. It's interesting. Hungary is coping with it. I mean, we got to that border, the Luzanka border crossing last night, expecting to see similar scenes to the ones we've been showing you in Poland, and frankly, you wouldn't even know there was a refugee crisis happening. There was no one there, and so we thought, wow, okay, and maybe you should expect that, given the number of refugees who've come from Ukraine to Hungary is 203,000, way smaller than the number that Poland is handling. But the Hungarian authorities do have a fairly smooth process in order. Refugees are taken away from the border, they're brought to registration centres like this once their papers are cleared at the border. This one here is in Berekzsarán. It's about 5 kilometres from the border. It's been set up, really, this is a cultural centre, and I mean, you can see here some wheelchairs and kids' seats that have been donated. Over here there's some apples and some other boxes with more aid inside, and in fact inside, we were here last night. Let's just show you very quickly. This is a cultural centre, Hungarian cultural centre, that's been commandeered to help with the refugee problem. This has arrived from Sardinia. Some guys in a van from Sardinia have dropped all these boxes off overnight. You could move in here up to sort of near the wall, but overnight all this has come in from Sardinia. So people bringing aid here from across Europe. Just be careful, Jim, as you're walking backwards, and there's a flight of steps. We don't want an accident. So people bringing aid from all across Europe, as we've been seeing previously. So, you know, from Germany, as we saw in Poland, from France, etc. And there are buses heading over here from the UK. I know that for a fact myself. I haven't seen them here, but I know that they are on the way. We're going to speak now to some Nigerian students, because, of course, not everyone who's coming through from Ukraine is a Ukrainian national. These guys are students from Sumy, the city of Sumy, and we can talk to one of them now. What's your name?
Damien.
Damien. And Damien, you were studying economics in Sumy?
Yeah, management.
Right. Just tell us what it was like there.
It was hell. Just that's the one word I will use for it. It was hell, and people were actually confused, scared, and I'm telling you, people are scared in their home. I mean, in their home. I'm not going to talk about us being the foreigners there, but people were scared in their home. Scared to go to sleep, scared to do anything. We literally have to be on the run every moment. I've been wearing this for over 5 days now. Not pulling off. Even if I take a shower, I still get to wear this with my shoes. Because even if you get to open the door, there's this fear in everybody. There's this fear in each and every one of us that anything can happen. We've experienced some bombings. Some days we wake up by bombings. Some nights we'll just have to, every night, we'll go to bomb shelters. That's where we sleep. That's where bomb shelters. It's in the cold. There is no heater there. The electricity went out. They actually bombed out a power plant. So the electricity was going off and on. The water supply was dirty. So if you didn't have any water stored up, you just have to drink it. No other options. The food was running out. The whole thing was just we were just living in fear. That's the whole thing. So it was really hell.
Yeah. And you were telling me that you saw. What did you see as you were evacuated?
Oh, okay. During the process of the evacuation, we were actually the first batch to be evacuated by the Red Cross. So on our way out, we saw a sophisticated armor tanks. I'm telling you, in different sizes, different forms. The bigger ones and the smaller ones. So we were evacuated, and on the way out, we saw about 50 or more.
50 more armoured Russian vehicles. And you said that you saw them, or you heard about them firing on the second bus.
Like I said, we were like the first batch out. So when we got out, I have a few friends that were like on the second batch of the evacuation bus. So I called some of them on the way. They told me they got fired on.
And you haven't heard from your friends since?
I haven't heard from them. I haven't heard from any of them. There were three numbers. I haven't heard from any of them yet.
Right.
So I have to just assume the best and also the worst at the same time.
Yeah. And you're on your way to Austria now to be with your brother?
Yes. I'm on the way to Austria now. Most of us are actually going back home, and we don't have any other options.
A lot to take in, a lot to process.
A lot. Like a lot. A whole lot. But we're holding up.
Yeah.
We're holding up.
Good to talk to you, Damien. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Damien, actually, just very quickly, just come to this man, gentlemen. Just very quickly, just tell us what you've been through.
Okay. Basically, we wake up to explosions every other day, and it's very hectic running from the apartment, because we used to live in an apartment off school, and it had like a bomb shelter under, but the last power plant that blew, because they attacked the power plant and it struck, and there was like total blackout for a couple of hours, no access to internet, no access to water. We're basically left in the dark, and it's been crazy. And because of how intense it was, we had to move from where we live to the hostel. The hostel is in the school premises, and there it's presumably a lot safer because there's also a shelter there, and the school authorities basically. So, and there are more people there. So, we've not had clean shower in days, no good food, no anything, not even to talk about sleep. So it's really been very, very crazy to say the least. Exhausting mentally, physically, and otherwise. But thank God we're alive. That's what counts the most.
Yeah. And where are you on your way to?
Sorry?
Where are you heading to?
Right now we're going to Hungary. We're going to Budapest, sorry.
Going to Budapest, and then onwards to, are you going back to Nigeria or somewhere else?
We're trying to figure it out now, because some of us, we just came here to school and we're like our own sponsors. So we're trying to do it by ourselves. So one step at a time, we'll take it one step at a time. Let's get some sleep, probably good food, and then think it through.
Yeah. Great. Sorry, what's your name?
My name is Randy.
Thank you, Randy. Really good to talk to you. Take care. They're going off to head off on the bus. 226 people stayed here overnight. They're making their onward journey like those guys we were talking to. And the interesting thing is that Hungary, for the last 10 years, Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister, he's pushed a very anti-immigration, anti-refugee hard line. He opposed Ukraine's membership of the European Union, moved Hungary closer to Russia. This invasion of Ukraine has put him in a very difficult position, and is a general election in a month's time. So the country very much doing a U-turn when it comes to how it deals with refugees, how it deals with migration, and it's caused a bit of a problem for him politically, Viktor Orban, who, according to the polls at the moment, has a very narrow lead over his opponent, and they go to the polls in about a month's time here.
Really interesting testimony and a totally different perspective from Hungary. Thank you so much for that, Paul.
Thank you. Paul in Hungary there. We're now going to Bradley Harris in Poland. Poland has taken the majority of refugees so far, and he caught up with a family from Spain who wanted to do their bit to help. Have a look at this.
Over 2 million people have fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion 2 weeks ago. Poland shares a 310-mile border with Ukraine and has taken in the majority of Ukrainians. Aid efforts are largely operated by volunteers, and people from all over the world have come to join the cause. A family from Barcelona travelled 2 days by car to get to the main border crossing in Medica. Packed with supplies, they told me why. My best friend is Ukrainian, and between all my friends we arranged to collect items such as medicine, baby food and clothes. I come with my aunt to deliver what we have collected. We have spent 2 days travelling from Spain, and we have been in different parts of Poland where there are Ukrainian refugees. We have delivered packets of food for them. Adriana is from Ukraine and needs help finding a new life, but she's confident there is a brighter future in her country.
I think everything will be okay because I hope we have amazing future. We can stand up and be the best country.
Bradley Harris, GB News, Medica.
And now we're going to get more reaction from NATO historian, journalist and an ex-officer reserve who is in Croatia. It's Dr. Peter Adams there. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you. What can you tell us? What can you tell us from the position where you are in Croatia? You've written extensively about the war in Ukraine. What we're seeing of the Ukrainian people, does that surprise you?
Well, we've had a run-up to this war for as long as it is imaginable, a warning that this might happen. And I think one of the reasons why the Hungarians and Poles from your last report were so well prepared is they took the dim view, the pessimistic view that war was likely to break out, whereas a lot of Europe hoped that they were dealing with a rational man and this was just threats and bullying. But I'm in Croatia, where there was a war 25 years ago. And in fact, I was part of the peacekeeping force and witnessing it. And the one thing you have to say about what's happening is the way sides use terror as a way of trying to push their opponents into a position. And we certainly see that with Russia. That's their form. That's their way of war. And we've seen that in Syria. So an attack on a hospital or a maternity ward or a school isn't an accident. It's part and parcel of their tactics to frighten their opponents, in this case the Ukrainians, into submission. And sadly, we anticipated this, and there'll be more of the same.
Yeah, look, we're looking at pictures of that hospital that was bombed and the huge crater that was left behind. Yes, as you said, maternity hospital, women giving birth at the time of that attack. Our Prime Minister describing that as there are few things more depraved than targeting the vulnerable and defenceless. On that note, though, American intelligence suggesting that they're now expecting to see chemical weapons deployed in places like Kyiv soon.
Well, of course, we're going back to the last major campaign the Russians fought without any restraint, which was in Syria. That was mostly Syrian ground troops, but most of the air forces were Russian. So that's the fear that they're going to repeat the pattern that they set in Syria from 2015 onwards. But and the reason why American intelligence has reached this conclusion is that the Russians are saying, well, we have found evidence of American and Ukrainian attempts to create chemical weapons, biological weapons. And I have to say that's all completely false. That's never been the case, and there's absolutely no evidence to suggest that is the case. But what we think the Russians are doing is setting up an excuse to do likewise. But there is another way of looking at this, which is this is just another extension of the Russian tactic of terror. They've already heightened their nuclear alert status, but they haven't done anything else. That's a threat. Chemical weapons, biological weapons are a threat. The bombing of hospitals are a threat. They targeted the TV tower in Kiev as a way to try and control information, another threat. All of this is not necessarily delivering, but bullying, trying to push people into their point of view. And I think at the moment, chemical biological weapons fit that picture.
Thank you, Doctor. That's Dr. Peter Caddick-Adams. He's a NATO historian and himself an ex-army officer. We're going to bring you up to date now with the rest of today's news.
An investigation has found failings by Network Rail and the collapsed outsourcing giant Carillion caused the Stonehaven rail crash in which 3 people died. The ScotRail train derailed there in August 2020.
A new YouGov report suggests an increasing number of pupils don't have the basic skills needed to start school. 1 in 4 teachers found that half of students couldn't follow instructions and struggled to share with others.
Tens of thousands of jobs will be created and more than 150 vessels will be built with a £4 billion injection into UK regional shipbuilding. Downing Street says the investment over the next 30 years will galvanise UK shipyards and suppliers.
42% of families with children living at home are expected to take on additional debt to deal with soaring energy bills. A financial confidence tracker also shows that 1/3 of families say they're struggling to pay their household bills.
Half of local authorities do not employ specialist teachers for pupils with both sight and hearing loss. A report from the disability charity Sense revealed that 52% of councils don't have any multisensory teachers for nearly 4,000 affected pupils.
32% of state school teachers don't have enough funding to deliver quality careers guidance. That's according to a report from the Sutton Trust. Careers guidance. I remember my college going into the sixth form, and they said, well, what would you like to do? And I said, I'd like to be a journalist, which was greeted with laughter. A broadcast journalist, I said specifically. And they said, haven't you considered a career in the professions? And I went, what are the professions? You know, medicine, what else is a profession?
I can imagine you handing out
the legal, and then they said, and they finished with, and the church. You'd be very good material for the church.
Aww.
And you could be calling me Father Eamonn.
That's a compliment.
At this stage.
Yeah.
But I said, no, I'll stick to being a journalist.
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember what careers advice I had. I don't remember taking them very seriously.
I don't think you'd take advice.
Are you joking? Of course I take advice. But I do remember there was a sort of disdain for our careers teacher. I think the thought was, well, I don't know. It was sort of like...
Yeah, but that's because you probably knew what you wanted to do.
I did know what I wanted to do from a very early age, and both my parents were professionals, so I had lots of advice from home on what path they thought I should take. Not that I followed it. I mean, they wanted us to be the same as they wanted my brother and I to be lawyers or doctors, and we both ignored them. Yeah, no, my mother would be very, very happy if I was the assistant manager, not the manager, but the assistant manager, I think, of our local co-op. She would think she would have died and gone to heaven, really. Well, my mum, for all her ambition for me, would be quite happy if I was a stay-at-home mum now. She's fed up of having to pick up the slack, I think. That's very true. Career story, career advice? Let us know. Where did you end up as opposed to where you thought you would be? Yeah, most of us feel just lucky to have a job, well, in this day and age, yeah, of course. Yeah. Let us know. It's at GBNews. And you, by getting in touch there, you'll be keeping other people in work there to yeah, exactly. Answer and read those. That's the tweet address, or you can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk. Defence and security analysts have told us that a Russian private military company sanctioned by the West and linked to allegations of war crimes is almost certainly on the ground involved in fighting in Ukraine. So the Wagner Group, which the Kremlin denies even exists, is a secretive organisation. It's made up of more than 5,000, mainly former members of the Russian military. It's been reported that group may have been tasked with trying to assassinate Ukrainian leaders, including the president. Our security editor, Mark White, examines the background to the Wagner Group.
A shadowy organisation gathering hard facts on the activities of the Wagner Group is far from easy. But they are, we've been told, active in Ukraine, likely involved in highly dubious activities. However, as Moscow doesn't even acknowledge their existence, Vladimir Putin has plausible deniability of whatever they're up to. The founder and leader of the group is a sinister, shaven-headed fellow by the name of Dmitry Utkin, a former senior officer in Russia's Spetsnaz Special Forces. Indeed, the Wagner name, we're told, is derived from his Spetsnaz code name, which apparently reflects his appreciation of the Third Reich and Hitler's favourite composer. Under Russian law, private military companies are illegal, publicly at least.
To call them a company would be a stretch, as there are no visible traces of this company existing. However, it has been deemed as an asset of plausible deniability by the Kremlin to be utilised for various different conflicts around the world. And they've been active not only in Central Africa, Venezuela, Syria, but also other parts of the world where it may be, again, for various reasons, not pragmatic for the Russian government to utilise their own state troops.
It was during deployments here in Syria and Central Africa several years ago that Wagner Group mercenaries were linked to allegations of war crimes, including torture, rape and murder. The wider group is now believed to be under the ownership of Yevgeny Prigozhin, a former criminal and billionaire restaurant owner nicknamed Putin Chef. He's one of a number of Russian elites facing Western sanctions. The West does, of course, also employ the services of private military contractors, groups like the US company Blackwater. Some of their employees were convicted and later pardoned in the killing of a number of Iraqi civilians in 2007. But Western contractors are at least regulated, and there's official oversight of their activities, unlike their Russian counterparts.
We've used private security companies to guard diplomats. We use them in Iraq, we the West that is, use them in Iraq, but mostly for non-military operations. The ones we're talking about here, that doesn't apply to. They're a different breed, if you like, and they're operating under different conditions. Whether they're accountable to the local military commanders on the ground or whether they're working back to some organisation in Moscow or elsewhere, I honestly don't know. But the reality is that in no way are they accountable in the same way that we in the West make our private companies accountable.
So are Wagner Group mercenaries now actively hunting Ukraine's leadership, including President Zelensky? Some with knowledge of their activities certainly believe so.
From what we understand in Ukraine right now, there is a kill team that are undertaking potential assassinations against key persons, including obviously Zelensky, that are very vocal in the charge for both morale for Ukrainian people, but also for the international community.
Whether their mission actually includes a leadership assassination command, defence and security analysts have told us they will certainly be involved in sabotage, false flag operations, and the likely interrogation and torture of captured Ukrainians, the kind of dirty jobs Vladimir Putin might want to publicly distance himself from.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. Fascinating.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And scary.
Yeah, really frightening. Look, we'll have more for you in just a moment. We'll be discovering how aid workers are managing in Ukraine as they battle so-called apocalyptic conditions. First of all, here's your Thursday forecast.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern. It's a sunny start in places this morning, but there will be further showers at times through the rest of the day. It will, however, be less windy compared with yesterday. A weather front that brought some heavy rain and strong winds to the northwest yesterday morning. Well, it's still with us, but it's slowly easing its way to the east, and it's a weaker feature now. So mostly it's an area of cloud that straddles much of the UK, and outbreaks of mainly light rain for Scotland, for northern England during the rest of the morning, with brighter skies following for a time across Wales, into the Midlands and southern England. Although still a lot of cloud on the map. Northern Ireland seeing hazy sunshine, staying dry here and less windy for many of us compared to yesterday. It's mild as well, 13 or 14 Celsius in the southeast. We're looking at 10 for Glasgow, 9 for Belfast. Into the evening, and further spells of rain or showers move up from the south. So on and off rain, I think, for many overnight as this system moves northwards. A lot of cloud, and the winds pick up once again through the hours of darkness. So that means that it will be a frost-free night, with most places seeing temperatures stay up at 7 to 9 Celsius. Then as we start off Friday, watch out for those showers first thing, but there will be some drier and brighter interludes at times. However, towards the southwest, a more prolonged band of rain and some heavy stuff with it moves into the southwest, crosses Wales, central southern England, then the Midlands by lunchtime. Now that breaks up into showers by the afternoon, so that for most, Friday afternoon is looking showery. There'll be some sunshine in between the showers, and it will stay blustery, risk of gales for exposed western coasts. But further showers are to come for the weekend. They'll ease away for a time on Saturday with some sunshine for many for at least a few hours before more wind and rain arrives on Saturday evening, continuing into Sunday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back at 6:28. We're talking about the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine now, which is continuing to get worse, although many Ukrainians have found more success in the past 24 hours evacuating from besieged cities.
Well, the emergency director of Hungarian Interchurch Aid, Giuliano Stocino-Weiss, joins us now. Giuliano, good morning to you.
Messages of hope are reaching us then as some of these humanitarian corridors have been successful. Let's start with the good news before we get on to some more of the bad news. How hopeful are you that these ceasefires along these crucial corridors will be upheld and continue?
What we're seeing is Hungarian Interchurch in here at the first day.
Right.
Giuliano, can you do anything with your microphone? We can't hear you. Can you get?
Right, we're going to do a little control room reset and see if we can hear that voice, because of course it is really important. And what I was trying to get to with him there is the talk of these hugely successful humanitarian corridors. We saw earlier in Paul Hawkins' report that he'd been speaking to students who'd successfully been evacuated from Sumy. But of course, you contrast that with the humanitarian situation in Mariupol, which has been described as apocalyptic. Tens of thousands of people trapped there. They've got no water, electricity, no medicines, and the absolutely shocking scenes yesterday of a maternity hospital where women had gone at their most vulnerable to go and give birth 2 babies being hit, a huge crater outside that hospital. Boris Johnson coming out and describing it as depraved. President Volodymyr Zelensky saying it is proof that the Russians are performing war crimes in his country and that this was an act of genocide.
And a lot of commentators saying that a lot of strikes like this are no accident. They're there to impart fear into the local population and getting people to think, well, if it happened there, it could happen to us as well. And the headlines in the front of the British papers, which we'll be going into very shortly, they have words like barbaric over them, evil upon evil, depraved. I mean, that is how basic it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the break. The time is 6:30, and then we're going to be back with David Wooding and Dawn Leeson, and they will give us their opinions on what the papers are reporting and saying. See you after this. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube. You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We were talking about schools not being equipped to give proper careers advice, and we're asking for your suggestions and opinions on that.
Yeah, we've had some interesting messages in, and I like this one because I've got a bit of a handful for a child myself, my firstborn. Well, this one says, at 14 years of age, this is Michelle, and at senior school, I was told you won't amount to anything. She says, yes, I was a bit of a handful, being a child of the 60s and from a broken home. Since then, I qualified as a state-enrolled nurse, then as a registered general nurse, then as a registered mental nurse. I took and passed 3 degrees. I finished my 35 years of nursing as a social worker. Not bad for someone who was written off at 14 years of age. Work hard, follow your dreams, stay safe. What an inspirational story.
Yeah, especially who else identifies that you won't amount to anything? Tell us what you did amount to. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe the teacher was right after all. At GB News, get in touch. Right, let's have a look at today's front pages. And we were mentioning these before the break in the Telegraph, warning that Russia may be planning a chemical attack similar to what we had seen in Syria.
The Times with a powerful headline aiming at mothers and babies.
Here's the Mirror. There's the one word, barbaric. That's the attack on that maternity ward yesterday.
The Daily Mail calls the attack depraved and shows a picture of a heavily pregnant woman being evacuated from the bomb site.
OK, Daily Express leads on that bombing as well. We're going to discuss that now in the newspapers. It says it's the ultimate depravity. Joining us now to discuss the papers, David Wooding, political editor, Sun on Sunday, and Dawn Neeson, herself an editor of the Daily Star and also a columnist with the Daily Star and many other publications as well. Very good morning to both of you. David, we were just saying most of the papers are going with that hospital bombing. You take the Sun front page, evil upon evil.
Yes, it's been very difficult for journalists to come up with words to describe the horror here, and these headlines show the efforts of editors to try and put it over in one word. Barbaric in the Mirror, depraved in the Daily Mail. I think that was using Boris Johnson's word. And the Sun have gone for evil upon evil, which is emphasising the fact that day after day, it seems to be getting worse. And what could be more evil, in fact, than attacking a maternity hospital?
Hospital which is bringing life into the world, and they snub it out.
Yes, and we saw these pictures of the huge crater, it's amazing that nobody died in this. 17 injured, but there are pictures of women about to give birth being carried out in the stretch into the cold, and that apocalyptic landscape with the trees all scorched and windows blown out of the building.
Do we know for sure that nobody died? Because the last I'd heard of Zelensky saying that he thought that there were people buried under the rubble, that there were children.
Yes, well, maybe that's the case. According to most of the papers this morning, it was saying that there were fears that there were deaths, but when they went to print, all the women and babies were in the basement. So it'll probably become clear as the day goes on.
Yeah, just awful anyway. Dawn, you've chosen the Daily Mail front page. It uses that word, depraved. Tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, all the papers this morning have that pretty iconic image of that poor lady being carried across the bombed-out courtyard, looking very heavily pregnant, covered in blood on the baby bump even, and your heart just aches for these people. But it's a very iconic image, and barbaric is how Boris Johnson has described this attack, and I'm sure we can all think of a few stronger words as well. But women in labour are amongst those wounded, and I do think it's astonishing that 17 people, as far as all the papers reporting this morning, have been injured, but nobody has died. I mean, you look at the pictures from here, and in particular, as David has already mentioned, that incredible crater, and it's like, you can't get your head around this happening to a maternity hospital. Say it was at your local maternity hospital. I mean, you've got children, Isabel, and you imagine that in the car park of your, And I read all the facts and the figures on this about the size of the bomb and what happened, etc., etc. But it's the human aspect that keeps bringing me back round to what is actually going on. Because this was a maternity hospital just like everyone in this country up until a couple of months ago, and now look at it, and you think of what those women are giving birth isn't pleasant at the best of times.
Well, it's
to do so with bombs on you.
Well, it's a known fact that if women are stressed when they're going into labour, that then they have more complicated deliveries. And we also know that Mariupol doesn't have water, it doesn't have medicine coming in, it doesn't have power. So, they may have survived this, but many women will have very difficult labours, and it'll be difficult conditions for the newborn babies as well.
Absolutely.
Extremely worrying situation.
Awful.
Let's look inside The Guardian, or at the front page of The Guardian, David, and this is talking about this ongoing talking about this attack on the hospital. But I want to go to The Telegraph. I was trying to turn it on to the chemical attack now, because there's concerns from American intelligence that there could be chemical attacks as soon as today in places like Kyiv. And as you say, evil upon evil was the headline for The Sun, and it does seem as though just when we think we can't be shocked anymore, something worse is emerging.
Yes. I mean, there's suggestions that a thermobaric bomb was used in this instance because of the damage. It's a vacuum bomb which sucks in the oxygen and creates a more intense heat, and therefore it can actually disintegrate bodies that can be vaporized because it's so powerful, the explosion. So they've gone to that step, and there are now some fears that he may be planning to use chemical or even thermonuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons, which are used over smaller areas. Now, there was a press conference with Maria Zakharova, who's the foreign ministry spokesperson in Moscow yesterday, in which she said that the US had been funding chemical weapons or germ warfare plants inside the Ukraine. And this seems to be this has been dismissed as absurd and totally false. But nevertheless, it seems that it might be scene-setting by the Russians as some kind of excuse for launching weapons of this nature, or an excuse to cover the use of them in the future.
And Dawn, where do we go from there? Because we've already had, a Chernobyl attack. We had another nuclear power station, whether deliberately targeted or not. You've got this whole chance of nuclear proliferation, really, because whether it's short-range nuclear weapons fired, chemical weapons involved in this, this has all the potential for things to go wrong or to antagonise the West.
Oh, well, absolutely, and I think anyone of a certain age will remember the sort of like the nuclear war warnings we had back in, I think, the 70s and the 80s, where you were advised to put a door up and sort of hide under a door frame, etc., to protect yourself, which we all know is not going to do anything. So I think the big thing with this particular conflict is the fact that there's this nuclear threat with the power stations, and they've cut the power to Chernobyl now, and that's being kept running on emergency generators. I mean, if they cut out, what happens? I mean, that's in all our minds, isn't it? It's the constant fear of the nuclear threat, and obviously, whether Putin will actually, go full tonto and press that button, and you hope that there are people around him going, no, don't go near that button. But I mean, it's like, going back to the hospital bombing as well. I mean, as David just mentioned, Maria Zakharova, the Russian foreign minister, the claim, this is also being repeated in the Russian newspapers, is that Ukrainian fighters had ejected patients and staff from the hospital and were using it as a military base. So this is what the Russian people are being told as well. So there's so much misinformation out there, and you've only got to look at the pictures of what, the remains of that hospital. But this is not what the Russians are being told. And obviously social media has a lot to answer for as well, because it's even worse on social media. But it's, it is obviously not accurate, but there's so much misinformation. But the nuclear thing and the power station is, I think, probably the thing that worries most of us.
Yeah, I guess because that makes it real to us, because then there's a danger to us.
Yeah.
But, I also am interested to see what the West's response will be if chemical weapons are unleashed, if we start to see things like gassing of people. And, of course, it was famously a red line in Syria, wasn't it?
We saw
Obama, in the end, let it happen, didn't respond. And would we do the same?
Well, it makes you wonder, Isabel.
We have to be prepared to do the same, because if Putin doesn't believe we will do the same, he wins. So you've got to have somebody, if he does the mad thing, if he presses the button, what do we do? We're all behind it. I mean, I wonder how many nukes are trained on Moscow or key facilities around Russia right now. It must be. What's the point?
They must be, yeah, absolutely, because he has rather insanely said that he would be more or less threatened to use nuclear weapons if we intervened. It seems to me that Putin is trying to goad us all the time. It's almost like this business of the no-fly zone, whether he really wants us to go in there so that we shoot down a Russian jet, and that gives him a chance to escalate it. It's very, very difficult to call which way he's going to go.
Well,
next.
that was like going back to Chernobyl. That was the targeting of Chernobyl. He very cleverly didn't target the power station structure itself, but an outbuilding. It is almost like he's saying to us, I want you to come in. I want you to get involved in this. For what reason, I don't know. But as you were saying, Eamonn, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. I mean, greater minds than mine have tried to work out what the answer is to this. And honestly,
he's not rational, is he?
It lies within Russia. I mean, how much do Russian people actually know about what's going on in their name?
Well, quite. And this is the misinformation. I was looking at some of the Russian newspapers overnight, and some of the information they're giving. To be honest, it's not as much propaganda as you think, especially if you read social media from some of the claims on there. It is sort of like it was alleged and it was claimed, like the hospital, it was alleged and it was claimed as being used by Ukrainian forces. But they're not saying it definitely was and we are in the right. But there is so much misinformation.
I think it all comes down to, in the end, two things. One, it will be the Russian people themselves.
Yes.
And the sanctions, hopefully, will have some impact on that. We've seen 4,500 people arrested on the streets of Russia for demonstrating. So clearly the message is being driven home. They can't have their hamburgers or their fizzy drinks. They're all being taken away. So that's point one. And secondly, we're going to have to give an exit route for Putin.
Yeah.
If we corner him and don't allow him a way out to save some face.
Come and have a safe haven in the criminal court in The Hague. Well, you'll be very warmly received.
Well, that can be done afterwards. But if you remember, if you go back to the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Americans didn't rub the Russians, the Soviets' noses in it when they turned their ships round at the end and claim it was a victory. They allowed them a way out.
He's a cornered rat. We need to give him an escape.
Well, I actually think the third option is that his forces end up doing that. And there's a really interesting piece, and maybe we can get into it in one of the later paper reviews inside the papers, I think it's page 4, where one of the mayors of one of the key towns that is protecting, is sort of the barrier between Russia and Odessa, which supplies the whole of Ukraine with food. And he's basically said that they're welcoming Russians that want to defect with open arms. They're giving them food and water and telling them that they'll be treated humanely and their parents can come and collect them. And if more of that happens, maybe that'll be the end to it.
I think that's the answer, isn't it?
Guys,
hopefully.
Thank you both very much indeed. David and Dawn will be back in about 45 minutes' time. I hope you can join them then. Thank you very much indeed. The time, 6:45.
Now, we've been talking a lot about refugees during the programme so far, and some of those fleeing the conflict are relatives of people living here in the UK.
Our reporter Amelia Harper has been speaking to a woman who fears her mother's trapped and in danger of going hungry in Ukraine.
For every person trying to flee Ukraine, there are many who can't. One of them is Nina, a grandmother stuck in a small village in northern Ukraine, just south of the Belarus border. Her daughter, Natalia Scott, doesn't know if she's okay.
Nobody can contact her. I was looking to find a way to call the landline of like a local village kind of authority or their village hall or whatever, but it wasn't possible. However, I found a person who could manage to phone there, and he was said over phone that we are not allowed to talk and hung up a phone. So I assume that the people who in charge now there, not Ukrainians.
Зараз абонент знаходиться поза зоною досяжності. Будь ласка, залиште повідомлення після сигналу.
You don't know if she has food. You don't know how dangerous where she is. I know she doesn't have electricity. I know that she doesn't have food supply. So whatever she had, that's only what she has. And maybe she's in danger of hunger. I don't know. It's all possible, that horrible scenario. So it's just I don't know how to describe the way I feel. It's just horrible.
Across the UK, Ukrainian protesters mourn for the fate of their families.
My heart is broken. My heart is broken for every person who has been hurt, who's been terrorised, who's been made to leave their homes and built and hide in cellars because of that maniac. That's how I feel, but at the same time, I'm so proud of our nation.
16-year-old Stefan reflects on what life is like for his relatives.
I think about my family there. I visit them, I've been there. I see the pictures of the city that I've walked around, the streets, the monuments I've seen, and they're not the same. It's hard to concentrate in school. It's hard to do my homework properly when I'm thinking about whilst I'm in the warmth of my home with good clothing, a soft bed, what are my family doing? Making improvised arms, things like making Molotov cocktails. Whilst I'm there sitting in a comfy chair writing about something to do with biology. I can't stand it.
Help our refugees! Help our refugees! Help our refugees!
From the UK, the message is clear. Amelia Harper, GB News.
Now, the petrol price, it's skyrocketed, hasn't it, as a result of that war in Ukraine. Let's join GB News' South East of England reporter Ellie Costello. And Ellie, you are at the most expensive petrol station in the country, perhaps unsurprisingly in Chelsea, in West London. Come on then, let us know, how much does it set people back there?
Hi, Isabel and Eamonn. Yes, we're in a very affluent, leafy part of West London today. I am in Chelsea. This is the most expensive petrol pump in the UK. And perhaps unsurprisingly, as you can see, none of the prices are advertised anywhere. There's no big board that you'd usually find outside a petrol pump. But I have done some investigative journalism for you this morning. Don't you worry. £2.18 per litre for petrol here. Can you believe that? That is eye-watering prices. £2.29 for a litre of diesel at this petrol station here in Chelsea.
I don't think I've ever known it at that price in my lifetime, honestly.
No, I'm sure that's
£2.18.
absolutely right. Are people actually stupid enough to buy it there?
Well, this is part of it, Eamonn. I mean, because they're not advertised, people are pulling up, but we have seen people pull up and then pull very quickly away, perhaps unsurprisingly, because the prices are so high. But no, we haven't actually seen anybody complete a purchase. We've been here for the last 45 minutes, and if anybody does actually buy fuel here today, I will be speaking to them to see how they feel about paying that extortionate amount for petrol. And of course, lots of people will be feeling the same up and down the country. I'm sure we've all pulled up at a petrol pump if we are drivers in the past few weeks and been pretty shocked at the price that we have to pay. But why is this happening? Well, a lot of this is to do with Russia invading Ukraine, and Russia is the second biggest exporter of crude oil in the world. So once they invaded Ukraine 2 weeks ago, there were, of course, concerns about the supply chain. And once those sanctions came in on Russia from Western countries like the US and Canada said they didn't want to receive Russian oil at all. So they will be looking at other countries such as Saudi Arabia for their oil now. And just like anything, when you've got a high demand and less supply, those prices will go up. But the message here is do not panic. Britain only relies on about 8% of its fuel comes from Russia. So less of a panic here. But the prices that we're seeing here today are because we are getting that cost put on to the consumer.
Right. So just give us it again. The price is actually per litre. It stands at what?
So here it is £2.18 for a litre of petrol, £2.29 for a litre of diesel. And for premium petrol, it's £2.35. I mean, we were just thinking about it here. In terms of Chelsea, obviously, it's a really affluent area. It's got the highest concentration of SUVs in London. Some motoring journalists put it at 1 in 10 cars here are Range Rovers. So I was just talking to the cameraman here, trying to do some quick maths. If you've got a Range Rover and it's 100-litre fuel capacity, so if you're filling up here, that's over £200 to fill up your family car. And lots of people say, look, it's a really affluent area, they can afford £200 on their petrol, but I'm also seeing lots of builders' vans pass at this time of the morning. They don't have a choice. They will have to be using their cars, they'll have to be out driving, that's how they get their kit around, and there aren't that many petrol stations around here. I think there's 4 in the surrounding area, so you are quite a captive audience, and you are going to have to pay these prices because it's not worth driving all the way out to get something cheaper.
I want the person who runs that forecourt to hate you any more than they already do, but Eamonn just whispered to me, is that even legal to not advertise the price of the fuel that they are expecting their punters to pay? I wonder if that is a bit controversial, but they're going to really hate us for asking that question.
I'm not sure if it's legal, but it's certainly cheeky, isn't it? I mean, I went in this morning and I had to ask how much they were charging at the pumps. They wouldn't tell me. I had to go look myself and check out the little box at the bottom that says how much the previous person has paid. That's how I found out the price. So it is certainly cheeky, but I guess it's to keep people coming through. But what will happen is people will see how much it's costing and they'll drive straight back out the forecourt. But we are going to try and speak to the manager in here. I'm not sure he's going to like me very much, but we'll see what we can do for you later this morning.
You can work your charm, Ellie.
But as you say, Ellie, you drive straight through, but there's nowhere else to go.
Well, that's the thing.
There are so few petrol stations around. I mean, they actually seem to make more money by being supermarkets than
Yeah.
petrol stations. I remember the time you used to be able to go in and get a spark plug or a fan belt.
Oh, really?
The petrol stations sold things that were related to cars.
Oh, yeah?
Now, of course, you only go in and get a box of Maltesers or a bunch of flowers. Or
Maybe that's your way in, Ellie. Go and get some snacks, and then they might be a bit more amenable. Anyway, we'll leave you to it. Ellie, thanks for that. So there we go, £2.18.
And for the fancy petrol, $2.35.
Well, good job I don't have a Range Rover. That's all I'm saying.
Not that you don't want one. Yes.
Well, that's another segment.
Yes. This is strange.
Stop it.
She says, I just have a Range Rover. But every time I'm out, she goes, that's the Range Rover I want. That's it in blue.
Don't.
Ivory seats. There.
Don't forget the
There's
piping.
nothing wrong with being aspirational.
Yeah.
That's the
I'm
other
not
thing
allowed.
about London, or a lot of places now. I mean, I remember, I have a picture taken when I was 18 years of age on my Instagram account, and it's me with my first car, which was a Fiat 124, a Fiat worse than death. And it was 550 quid it cost me.
What?
550 quid.
Crikey, that's how much it would cost you to fill up.
For petrol now. So, yeah, I remember that was like 6 quid to fill up then, those days. Yeah. But my point being that this is in our street, and there is my car and maybe, 6 others you can see in the shot down the street. And now every house in the street that I grew up in has 3 cars per house. Everybody's got a car.
And we wonder why the planet is doomed.
Yeah. It is. It's nowhere to park. Nowhere to park anywhere. Look, that's good. 5 to 7 is the time. Back after this. Take it away.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern. It's a sunny start in places this morning, but there will be further showers at times through the rest of the day. It will, however, be less windy compared with yesterday. A weather front that brought some heavy rain and strong winds to the northwest yesterday morning. Well, it's still with us, but it's slowly easing its way to the east, and it's a weaker feature now. So mostly it's an area of cloud that straddles much of the UK, and outbreaks of mainly light rain for Scotland, for northern England during the rest of the morning, with brighter skies following for a time across Wales, into the Midlands and southern England. Although still a lot of cloud on the map. Northern Ireland seeing hazy sunshine, staying dry here and less windy for many of us compared to yesterday. It's mild as well, 13 or 14 Celsius in the southeast. We're looking at 10 for Glasgow, 9 for Belfast. Into the evening, and further spells of rain or showers move up from the south. So on and off rain, I think, for many overnight as this system moves northwards. A lot of cloud, and the winds pick up once again through the hours of darkness. So that means that it will be a frost-free night, with most places seeing temperatures stay up at 7 to 9 Celsius. Then as we start off Friday, watch out for those showers first thing, but there will be some drier and brighter interludes at times. However, towards the southwest, a more prolonged band of rain and some heavy stuff with it moves it into the southwest, crosses Wales, central southern England, then the Midlands by lunchtime. Now that breaks up into showers by the afternoon, so that for most, Friday afternoon is looking showery. There'll be some sunshine in between the showers, and it will stay blustery, risk of gales for exposed western coasts. But further showers are to come for the weekend. They'll ease away for a time on Saturday with some sunshine for many for at least a few hours before more wind and rain arrives on Saturday evening, continuing into Sunday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube. You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ukraine's President Zelensky has described the Russian bombing of a maternity hospital last night as the ultimate proof of genocide against his country.
A very good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock on this, the 10th of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
We're live, as always, across the whole world, on your TV, on radio and online. And this is what's leading the news this morning.
A desperate search for survivors is underway in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol after maternity hospital was directly hit by Russian rockets.
It comes as US officials raise concerns that Russia could be setting the stage for the use of chemical weapons after Kremlin officials have alleged that the US has been supporting a bioweapons program in Ukraine.
Also coming up, we discover the truth about so-called dark money and ask if the economic crime bill will be enough to crack down on oligarchs and further sanctions against Russia.
And as always, you can get involved in any of our discussions this morning. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or you can tweet us at gbnews. So huge numbers of civilians have been fleeing cities across Ukraine in what is the fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since the Second World War. The Ukrainian ambassador to the UK has called on the UK government to end the bureaucratic red tape for refugees.
Bradley Harris, for us, has been in Poland, which has taken the majority of refugees so far. He caught up with a family from Spain who wanted to do their bit to help.
Over 2 million people have fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion 2 weeks ago. Poland shares a 310-mile border with Ukraine and has taken in the majority of Ukrainians. Aid efforts are largely operated by volunteers, and people from all over the world have come to join the cause. A family from Barcelona travelled 2 days by car to get to the main border crossing in Medyka. Packed with supplies, they told me why. My best friend is Ukrainian, and between all my friends we arranged to collect items such as medicine, baby food and clothes. I come with my aunt to deliver what we have collected. We have spent 2 days travelling from Spain, and we have been in different parts of Poland where there are Ukrainian refugees. We have delivered packets of food for them. Adriana is from Ukraine and needs help finding a new life, but she's confident there is a brighter future in her country.
I think everything will be okay because I hope we have amazing future. We can stand up and be the best country.
Bradley Harris, GB News, Medyka.
Well, journalist Maciej Barbu is in Bucharest now. He was previously in Kyiv and joins us this morning. Very good morning to you. I hope I pronounced your name right. I'm terribly sorry if I got that wrong. Look, just tell us about your own journey and why you decided to get out of the country.
Well, so I've been reporting on Ukraine since the beginning of this war. Actually, I got there about 3-4 days before it officially started, and I've been reporting from Odessa, Kiev, Mariupol, the besieged city of Mariupol, and I just returned to Romania just to pack more gear and to switch my equipment, because I felt that it's no longer safe to report as I did in the beginning as a freelance journalist with just the minimum protection gear and a backpack. So I came back just to rest for a few days, refuel, get everything sorted out, and I'm heading back to Ukraine tonight.
Oh, gosh.
Richard, what have you heard about this maternity hospital that has been bombed? We're not sure if there are fatalities or not. Have you heard anything?
So I'm in touch with local journalists from Mariupol, people who actually fled from Mariupol, but they have their own family, friends, and contacts in the area. And I was concerned because just less than 10 days ago, I was walking on the streets of Mariupol talking to people. And for me, it's a very emotional and strong story. Just watching those images, it's heartbreaking on a very personal level. From what I'm speaking with them, they don't have access to the area. It's cordoned off at the moment, and it's blocked in terms of actually getting some footage, getting some information from people. It's very hard to get in and talk to the people in Mariupol at the moment, because the communications are very slow, if not almost inexistent at the moment. But the local journalists, and I'm not going to give their names for obvious reasons, they're telling me that there are a number of at least injured people from what they heard. Now, this is not confirmed. It's just one source, the people from Mariupol who they're in touch with their families and relatives, but again, without having access to the direct site at the moment. It's being cordoned off, as far as I understand.
It's so interesting to hear you saying, as a journalist, you try to be objective, but you find, the story of Mariupol particularly emotional. I mean, I knew nothing about the city before the war broke out, and I have found the images extremely distressing as well. And I can only imagine how much worse that is for you. I think Mariupol is going to be one of those places that we talk about for decades to come, and has really suffered more than anywhere else in all of this, and the sort of suffering that people are experiencing when they're completely cut off. Tens of thousands of people in that city, no power, no water, no medicine. It's truly horrifying.
It is indeed, and what's striking is that while I was in Mariupol, and I've reported from Mariupol, like I said 10 days ago, I was there for 4 or 5 days, you would speak with people on the streets and they will tell you nothing will happen to this city. Mariupol is in eastern Ukraine. It's a Russian stronghold. 60-80% of people there consider themselves as pro-Russian. This is from multiple sources, including people who local journalists, local activists, and just people on the streets. So this is quite shocking to them. Speaking to them on WhatsApp now, asking what happened. What happened from 2 weeks ago when you thought you're going to be absolutely safe living here. From now, one of the biggest humanitarian disasters in Ukraine. It's one of the hardest hit cities. And what they're telling me is that the army and whatever resistance, that 20% is putting up a lot of resistance at the moment, trying to defend the city. So we have to understand these layers, because they will play a big role in the coming weeks and months in terms of the focus on Mariupol and on eastern Ukraine in general. Don't get fooled by the fact that we have a strong pro-Russian minority. At the moment, the feeling amongst people in eastern Ukraine, and obviously in Ukraine in general, is that no one is safe from the Russian shelling. No matter if you agree or not with Putin, your life is in danger at the moment in Ukraine, including eastern Ukraine, including the city of Mariupol.
OK, we'll leave it there. Mircea Barbu, thank you very much indeed, and please do stay safe, absolutely. Just want to bring you some reaction that we've had from the comments about petrol. I remember showing the most expensive petrol station in Britain, which was in London. It was in Chelsea in London, and up to £2.35 for the extra clean fuel there as well. Brian says, I've seen a difference of 7p a litre between two nationally branded petrol stations, only 4 miles apart. The government needs to intervene and cap the price of petrol and diesel, same as they do with gas and electricity. And on that point, I've seen this editorial in The Sun, and they're asking Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, when will he slash fuel like Ireland? Each day heaps more misery on working people as pump prices and energy bills soar. While other countries act, our treasury's frozen in the headlights. Rishi may fancy himself as a tax-lowering chancellor. Now, says The Sun, is the time to prove it.
Interesting. Yeah, pressure is definitely mounting on the Chancellor. Paddy says fuel prices, nothing short of profiteering from these companies. Absolutely disgusting. Keep your thoughts coming in this morning.
And also, if your local fuel station is not advertising its prices,
I think that's quite shocking, actually.
You think, yeah, so the idea is you'll just come in, you'll stick the nozzle into the car, and then you'll realise it's 215, 216, 270. You're not going to stop then, I suppose. So is that legal? Is that right? Is that happening around you? Let us know. Rest of today's top stories, they shape up like this.
An investigation has found that failings by Network Rail and the collapsed outsourcing giant Carillion caused the Stonehaven rail crash. 3 people died when a ScotRail train derailed in August 2020.
A new YouGov report suggests an increasing number of pupils don't have basic skills needed to start school. 1 in 4 teachers found that half of students couldn't follow instructions and struggled to share with others.
Tens of thousands of jobs will be created and more than 150 vessels will be built, with a £4 billion injection into UK regional shipbuilding. Downing Street claims the investment over the next 30 years will galvanise UK shipyards and suppliers.
30 years. 30 years we've got to wait on that. 42% of families with children living at home are expected to take on additional debt to deal with soaring energy bills. Financial Confidence Tracker also shows that 1/3 of families say they're struggling to pay those household bills.
OK, it's 7:10. We're going to move on to a really interesting story now. Defence and security analysts have told GBNews that a Russian private military company sanctioned by the West and linked to allegations of war crimes is almost certainly on the ground and involved in fighting in Ukraine.
They're called the Wagner Group, and the Kremlin denies it even exists. It's a secretive organisation made up of more than 5,000, mainly former members of the Russian military.
Here's our security editor, Mark White, who has examined the background of this infamous group.
A shadowy organisation gathering hard facts on the activities of the Wagner Group is far from easy. But they are, we've been told, active in Ukraine, likely involved in highly dubious activities. However, as Moscow doesn't even acknowledge their existence, Vladimir Putin has plausible deniability of whatever they're up to. The founder and leader of the group is a sinister, shaven-headed fellow by the name of Dmitry Utkin, a former senior officer in Russia's Spetsnaz Special Forces. Indeed, the Wagner name, we're told, is derived from his Spetsnaz code name, which apparently reflects his appreciation of the Third Reich and Hitler's favourite composer. Under Russian law, private military companies are illegal, publicly at least.
To call them a company would be a stretch, as there are no visible traces of this company existing. However, it is being deemed as an asset of plausible deniability by the Kremlin to be utilised for their various different conflicts around the world. And they've been active not only in Central Africa, Venezuela, Syria, but also other parts of the world where it may be, again, for various reasons, not pragmatic for the Russian government to utilise their own state troops.
It was during deployments here in Syria and Central Africa several years ago that Wagner Group mercenaries were linked to allegations of war crimes, including torture, rape and murder. The wider group is now believed to be under the ownership of Yevgeny Prigozhin, a former criminal and billionaire restaurant owner nicknamed Putin Chef. He's one of a number of Russian elites facing Western sanctions. The West does, of course, also employ the services of private military contractors, groups like the US company Blackwater. Some of their employees were convicted and later pardoned in the killing of a number of Iraqi civilians in 2007. But Western contractors are at least regulated, and there's official oversight of their activities, unlike their Russian counterparts.
We've used private security companies to guard diplomats. We use them in Iraq, we the West that is, use them in Iraq, but mostly for non-military operations. The ones we're talking about here, that doesn't apply to. They're a different breed, if you like, and they're operating under different conditions. Whether they're accountable to the local military commanders on the ground, or whether they're working back to some organization in Moscow or elsewhere, I honestly don't know. But the reality is that there no way are they accountable in the same way that we in the West make our private companies accountable.
So are Wagner Group mercenaries now actively hunting Ukraine's leadership, including President Zelensky? Some with knowledge of their activities certainly believe so.
From what we understand in Ukraine right now, there is a kill team that are undertaking potential assassinations against key persons, including obviously Zelensky, that are very vocal in the charge for both morale for Ukrainian people, but also for the international community.
Whether their mission actually includes a leadership assassination command, defence and security analysts have told us they will certainly be involved in sabotage, false flag operations, and the likely interrogation and torture of captured Ukrainians, the kind of dirty jobs Vladimir Putin might want to publicly distance himself from.
It appears some of you are picking up a bit of a crackling noise from our transmission today, so we're going to have to deal with that, and we'll try and do it during the commercial break. Obviously, we should just tell you about reports on the ground in Ukraine as well.
Yeah, there are reports which are hard to verify, so there are lots of questions about how we get the correct picture during the conflict. We're going to be talking to a journalist and documentary maker, Tim White, about all of this. He's previously taught journalism in Kyiv. Very good morning to you. Look, it's so important. They often say that the first casualty of war is the truth. It's very easy in a world where Vladimir Putin is clearly weaponizing the truth. We've just seen it today with these allegations about chemical weapons being used to try and justify his own use of them, which is raising that fear. What's been your experience in all of this and the work that you've done whilst in Ukraine?
Morning, Isabel. Yes, thank you. Morning, Eamonn, as well. Thanks for having me on. Well, funnily enough, the first documentary I did in Ukraine was about fake news, and that was shortly after the first invasion by Russia of Ukrainian territory. And we pointed to some of the usual deceits that come from the Kremlin. Nowadays, things have moved on quite a bit. Citizen journalism is a lot better. There's a lot more videos coming in. It's giving journalists and editors the chance to geolocate videos for their authenticity and checking date timestamps and things like that. So I get a lot of my stuff from my Twitter feed from social media out there, a little bit from friends. I still have friends in Ukraine as well. With regard to the Kremlin's accusations, I mean, a lot of them are just so transparent because they're just made for the domestic market, which is unfortunately brainwashed by and large, and they just do not query and have no chance to access alternate sources now when even foreign journalists have by and large given up because of the fear of the new law threatening them with 15 years in jail. But as I said, by and large, their claims are quite easily disproved, such as the chemical weapons one yesterday and happening to find things that incriminates the USA. And so it doesn't really take too much depth to get rid of the Kremlin's claims at times, Isabel. But with regard to the sources that come in, the breaking news, like the appalling attack on the hospital yesterday, the maternity and children's hospital, then we check the location, we look at pictures from satellites to see if it is the right location. And most of the time, the stuff that's been unloaded to private channels has been the citizen journalism. The people with mobile phones have actually checked out, by and large, to be quite correct in this war so far.
Where is that citizen journalism reaching, Tim? Is it going back into Russia at all? Putin is acting in the name of the Russian people. Does he have their support? What do they think about what's going on? Are they being told the truth?
Well, they're certainly not being told the truth. Most people still get their news from domestic and national TV stations, and it is all totally censored. You're probably aware, viewers are probably aware that if you mention the word war or invasion, then you can be jailed for up to 15 years, no questions. And by the way, it won't be a fair trial, of course. But a lot of the younger generation are aware of what's going on. We saw 5,000 nearly arrested in the last day of major protests at the weekend, primarily in Moscow and St. Petersburg, but in 50 cities across Russia. So there is a lot of the younger generation using social media. Telegram is a very popular channel, few people using Viber, and Instagram periodically has been allowed through, and a lot of people are using VPNs, private networks, to try to bypass Russia's system of blocking certain accounts. And for instance, Facebook and Twitter are regularly or permanently blocked, as well, of course, as access to any independent news sites, probably like GBNews as well, I dare say, is blocked. Virtually all Western news sites are blocked as well.
Yeah, Tim, just a final thought. You've lived there, you've worked there, you've reported on them. The Ukrainian people, what is it that's different about the Ukrainian people? Can you give us a short insight into what makes them tick?
It's very hard for us in the UK to understand, because we've had freedom. We've grown up with freedom. Our grandparents or great-grandparents might have been involved in wars, but even then we had our freedom and protected it. They have not grown up with freedom by and large. Now the generation coming through has, but it's their parents who lived through Soviet times. They are fighting for their very existence, as we were in the Second World War, I guess, or our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, but they're very much the here and now. They've had independence for only 30 years. At first, it was still very Sovietized. Since then, it's become a lot freer. There is real democracy. We've seen democratically elected presidents. We've seen a change of presidency. And all this nonsense about neo-Nazism is just stupid, by the way, from Russia. The last two presidents and former prime minister have all been Jewish. And so, for instance, aren't you getting out? Don't you want to get out? And they say, I need to protect my homeland. But what about you might die? Yes, I might, but I don't want to live in Russia. I don't want to live under Russia again. I'd rather die than lose my freedom. And that is why they have the moral high ground, and they certainly have the initiative in this war as far as the troops are concerned.
Tim, beautifully summed up. Thank you very much indeed. We appreciate your insight. Tim White is a journalist and he is a documentary maker, films on Ukraine. Thank you.
Coming up after the break, Paul Coit is back. He had COVID. We've missed him. He's back in the studio today. He's going to have us all the latest with the news. That's after the break. Yeah, I have missed him. Can't wait to see him. See you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Eamonn McGivern. It's a sunny start in places this morning, but there will be further showers at times through the rest of the day. It will, however, be less windy compared with yesterday. A weather front that brought some heavy rain and strong winds to the northwest yesterday morning. Well, it's still with us, but it's slowly easing its way to the east, and it's a weaker feature now. So mostly it's an area of cloud that straddles much of the UK, and outbreaks of mainly light rain for Scotland, for northern England during the rest of the morning, with brighter skies following for a time across Wales, into the Midlands and southern England. Although still a lot of cloud on the map. Northern Ireland seeing hazy sunshine, staying dry here and less windy for many of us compared to yesterday. It's mild as well, 13 or 14 Celsius in the southeast. We're looking at 10 for Glasgow, 9 for Belfast. Into the evening, and further spells of rain or showers move up from the south. So on and off rain, I think, for many overnight as this system moves northwards. A lot of cloud, and the winds pick up once again through the hours of darkness. So that means that it will be a frost-free night, with most places seeing temperatures stay up at 7 to 9 Celsius. Then as we start off Friday, watch out for those showers first thing, but there will be some drier and brighter interludes at times. However, towards the southwest, a more prolonged band of rain and some heavy stuff with it moves it into the southwest, crosses Wales, central southern England, then the Midlands by lunchtime. Now that breaks up into showers by the afternoon, so that for most, Friday afternoon is looking showery. There'll be some sunshine in between the showers, and it will stay blustery, risk of gales for exposed western coasts. But further showers are to come for the weekend. They'll ease away for a time on Saturday with some sunshine for many for at least a few hours before more wind and rain arrives on Saturday evening, continuing into Sunday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We're going to get an update on what's happening sports-wise here with the back pages. Paul Coit, good to see you, Paul.
Good to see you.
So, anyway, Champions League, let's begin with that first of all. You enjoyed the Real Madrid-PSG game?
Yes, I mean, I'd like to I would say Man City are through without any problem, but it was a 0-0. It was a dull 0-0 draw.
Naughty, but nice.
It was, that's exactly, that'll do. Yeah, we'll
nice
take that.
For them, okay.
Yeah, so they're through.
They've done the job.
But this is the game. It's Real Madrid against Paris Saint-Germain. So Paris Saint-Germain won the first game 1-0. They head over to Real Madrid, go 1-0 up, and then you're thinking, well, this is probably much done and dusted. It's less than half an hour to go. And Real Madrid all of a sudden turned it on and just shocked everybody. So the way they played was fantastic. The first goal, you've got Donnarumma, who's also one of the world's greatest goalkeepers, did the thing which I just cannot bear, did the little, the ball comes, all he can do, he just hoof it out. Yeah. I know, I'll do a little dribble, I'll do a little trick. You've got Karim Benzema, takes the ball off him, goes back out, he scores. So it's all level, 1-1. You've got Mauricio Pochettino after the game was saying it was an absolute disgrace because it was a foul, and that then affected the team. But you've got a team like Paris Saint-Germain, full of superstars, should know how to close out a game like that.
Yeah, but this playing from the back business is so annoying.
You're like me. It is annoying, but the thing is, it's one thing playing out from the back, but when you're a goalkeeper and then you're trying to do a trick, and it's all this, you're going to get punished. And then from then on, then the momentum pretty much swung towards Real Madrid. Yeah. They scored another one, and then the final one they scored literally from the PSG kickoff. And you've got players like Messi, you've got players like Neymar, and also Kylian Mbappe. They just fell to pieces. They just didn't know what to do about this. Yeah. So the whole PSG situation, where they're like the Harlem Globetrotters of football because there's so much money in there. It's just how much backbone is actually in it. They can do all the tricks, they can do all the stuff, but they don't have that, and so they're out of the Champions League again.
Well, the manager, Mauricio Pochettino, may suffer as a result of that, so it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
The good thing is for him, he will be on Manchester United's radar.
Yeah.
The bad thing is the question still comes up, well, what has he won?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, a lot of people, you just look on Twitter and it's all, very Spursy. It's this phrase Spursy where things get thrown away and they say, oh, it's Maurizio Pochettino, very Spursy. And I don't blame Maurizio Pochettino in this situation. There are people that also that are going, well, he should have made changes, he should have done with this, you know, they were 2-0 up and he should have. But the thing is, the players that they've got should be able to see a game out like that easily. But he's taking a lot of heat for it. Whether he's going to last, I would be surprised because they want to win.
If Antonio Conte doesn't hang around, he could end up back at Spurs.
He could well do.
Well, there's a lot of talk about that. Let's talk cricket in the West Indies. It's England.
Yeah, England. Well, the West Indies closed at 202 for 4, 109 runs behind England. Been a few mistakes on both sides, but it's turning into a good test match. There's Stuart Broad is out, and Jimmy Anderson are also. They haven't been taken to the West Indies. Bit of controversy about that. The bowlers haven't been that great, but it's finally poised. So we're on day 3. So that gets underway in Antigua 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Just a bit of tennis news, bit of update there. Novak Djokovic has pulled out of Indian Wells and the Miami Open. Is this same old story, coronavirus?
It is the same old story. He doesn't really have a choice in this. He was down to play, and I think he was aware that unless it's the whole vaccination thing that we saw in Australia, can't play, so he's not going to be there. The next tournament is in April, which is in Monte Carlo. So although there are certain tournaments he can play in, whether he's playing enough, and we saw that in Dubai when he got knocked out, whether he actually can go ahead and win any tournaments this season.
The Ukraine situation, the Russian oligarch situation extends to Formula One.
Yeah.
What news have you got for us there?
Nikita Mazepin is a driver for Haas, or was a driver for Haas, and his dad basically is a multi-billionaire, another oligarch, very close to Putin. There was talks that he was actually talking to Putin on the day of the invasion as well. So he's gone Dmitry. So to Dmitry, and often with Formula One, to get involved in Formula One, it has to be a lot of money behind drivers.
Yeah.
So he's backed his son. His son is not seen as one of the greatest drivers. A lot of money going into the team. So they're pretty much in an untenable position. They've decided that he's got to go because there are sanctions against his father. So therefore, Nikita has gone as well. Kevin Magnussen, who's a Dane who also drove for Haas before, is now coming to replace him. So that is now over.
Another casualty of the war.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Paul, appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
See you again tomorrow, I think. Yeah. 7:30 is the time. Good morning to you. You're watching and listening to GB News on TV and on radio. Going through the newspapers with David Wooding and Don Neeson right after this very short break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 7:33, time to take a look at your Thursday morning newspaper front pages, starting with The Mirror. It describes that attack on a maternity hospital in Mariupol as barbaric.
Here's The Telegraph. It warns that Russia may be planning a chemical attack similar to those that we have seen in Syria.
The Sun condemns Putin's actions as evil upon evil.
OK, let's go through these papers now. The political editor for The Sun on Sunday, that's David Wooding, and the also former editor and well-known columnist Dawn Neeson. Very good to see you both. David, it's the Moscow Times we've got access to here. Interesting. Are they subjected to censorship? Are they originating their news outside Russia?
Well, it's a very straightforward report here, which you probably read in the British newspapers, saying that Russia has moved to throttle independent reporting of the war in Ukraine. The difference is that the Moscow Times is taking a big risk by writing this, because Putin has already cracked down on a couple of broadcasting stations as a result of them giving more independent coverage of the war. Of course, let's not forget that you're not allowed to call it a war. You have to call it a military operation or a special operation.
Right.
And the liberation of
yes,
Putin.
Of course.
Yes.
Fake news is now an illegal act. So if the powers that be in Russia decide that you're spreading fake news, then you're subject to serious sanctions. And of course, the Moscow Times now fears it could be closed down as a result. Where Western anger is quoted in controlled state media as hysteria, and aggression is regarded as something that the Ukrainians are doing, and not what Putin's regime is doing. So it's interesting to see that the Moscow Times is bravely reporting this, and we'll just have to keep an eye on what happens.
We're actually going to be speaking to a journalist from the Moscow Times. He's been a regular on our programme in the recent months and weeks, but actually be the first time we've spoken to him since war broke out. Really interesting a little bit later on to get his perspective. Dawn, we have to talk about the story that's dominating most of the front pages, and this, of course, is about women being targeted whilst they're giving birth. And in fact, the take that the Kiev Independent is running this morning, because it's good to get the reflection of the papers in the country itself, is on babies being born actually in Kiev.
Yeah, this brings it home to me, Isabel. I mean, not just as a woman, but someone living in this country, living an ordinary life, it's hard to get your head around the technical stuff. But this is a first-person story about a young lady called Maria Shostak. She's 25, and it was the birth of her first child. It was the second day, so it's going back a week back. This is the first time she's given an interview, and literally in the cellar underneath, like a bomb shelter being converted into, and she says, the doctor tried to calm me. Don't be afraid, women gave birth even in besieged Leningrad. But she said, I looked around at the nurses' faces and they looked confused and whispered that they had no instructions on how to act or what to do. And it's just the reality of what it's like giving birth in a cellar with literally, I mean, the place she gave birth was literally bombed the day after. And thankfully her little boy was born, very small little boy, and, Dad got to see him straight away. But she said it was just like, it just brings it home, the reality of what the women and the children in particular, Isabel, are going through out there. Especially, it's the front page of every newspaper today, the bombing of the maternity hospital, and that poor lady literally about to give birth, being wheeled across a snow bombed out, courtyard, on the way to give birth. It's just horrendous.
And what are these children being born into? I mean, just absolute horror. That's the shock of it all. This little boy that you're talking about in Kiev, what will his first few months of life, indeed, who knows how long it will all go on for. Really, really tragic.
Right, let's get into the cancel culture. This is from the Daily Mail. What's the story, David?
Well, Tchaikovsky has been cancelled. Raises the question, have the sanctions gone too far? Because the Cardiff Philharmonic Orchestra has decided to scrap a concert on March the 18th of all Tchaikovsky music, Russia's perhaps best-known composer. He died, of course, 129 years before the invasion took place.
Something we'd recognise from Tchaikovsky. What did Tchaikovsky do?
All the ballet music from
Swan Lake.
Yeah. So
the 1812 overture, which has cannon fire in the middle of it, which was going to be played at this concert. The other one is the nutcracker suite, and perhaps we need a nutcracker to get rid of Putin.
Okay, so what do we all think about that? You know, for stuff that was written in the 19th century or whatever. Does it affect now?
It's a travesty, I think. I mean, we had Alexandra Tolstoy on this week on our programme. She's her father was a cousin of Leo Tolstoy, and she was saying the tragedy of all of this is that they're trying to erase wonderful Russian culture, and you've got all of these stories. Anna Karenina, War and Peace.
Of course.
Well, what we should be
Dr.
erasing is
Zhivago.
Putin.
It's Putin, yeah.
It's like the cancel culture. It's like, well, you're pulling down statues, and it's like, this is not what we need to be doing and worrying about now.
Okay, but I'm asking you, say it's not what we need to be doing. If you had a ticket for that Cardiff concert, would you be going along, or would you feel bad? Would you feel guilty about it? They're worrying about this reflecting on them, and they think they're doing the right thing. Would it stop you going?
Well, there is that point, and I must admit I did get a bit confused about why it took Coca-Cola and McDonald's so long to shut down their outlets and stop supplying. Yeah, I know the real reason, Eamonn. But I mean, I got annoyed by that, and I got annoyed at myself for being annoyed by that, if you know what I mean. It was like, so the whole Tchaikovsky thing.
No, but the difference is that is the right thing.
Yes,
they should not be trading,
absolutely.
and they should not be making money and contributing to Russian coffers.
Yeah.
This is a culture issue.
But you see, I generally don't like sport and the arts to get linked with politics. This is different because I think it's right that Russian football teams have been banned and Russian artists have been banned because it puts pressure on Putin. This is different. This is a concert in the UK. And let's look at other parts of classical music. Valery Gergiev, the great conductor who conducted the London Symphony Orchestra for some time, has been sacked by the Munich Orchestra, and he's had to go back to St. Petersburg, his hometown, because he supports Putin. Now, I think that's right. But then on the reverse of that, you've got Vasily Petrenko, the former conductor at the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, who was an associate conductor of one of the Russian orchestras. He's now said he will not perform in Russia until this is over. So I think that's right. But whether a concert in Cardiff of Tchaikovsky music...
and the orchestra's what is it? The Welsh Philharmonic?
It's the Cardiff Philharmonic.
Cardiff Philharmonic. So it's people, it'd be a lot of people who are from Wales, who are from Britain, and they'll be losing out in terms of their work, and the people that run the theatre and whatever it is. How is this hurting Putin?
What's that? But it's virtue signalling.
Well, it is. I mean, the thing is, the International Cat Federation have also banned Russian-born cats from entering their competitions. I mean, where are we going with this one? I mean,
the poor pussies.
I wasn't going to do any jokes about that.
No, but I'm just saying, they have nothing to do with it, have they?
I know.
Do you know, there's a story today, and I think it's in the Star, and it's about Kiev Zoo. And the people who've stayed behind, and obviously, human safety comes first and whatever. But you're dealing with giraffes and rhinos and lions and tigers and all sorts of things.
That's really human, isn't it? That story. I mean, there's like 40 people, vets, zookeepers, and their families that have stayed there in the zoo, and the gorilla is traumatised, and they're really caring for these animals.
I tell you what's interesting about zoos. We have a zoo in Belfast, and at night time when it's quiet, you can just hear lions growling and chimpanzees, whatever chimpanzees doing.
Roaring.
When they're growling.
That's what bears do.
Chimpanzees don't roar, do they? Chimpanzees don't roar.
What do chimpanzees do?
Call.
Could you
go on, Isabel. Give us
me an example.
I actually couldn't give you. I could do quite a lot of animal calls. My brother lived in Africa. I could do a hyena, for example, but I can't do a chimp.
Does that remind you of a chimp? Like Planet of the Apes.
No comment.
Anyway. Right, so that's, what do you think on that, not my impersonation, the idea of the cancel culture at GBNews?
I'd love to hear from the orchestra themselves. Get in touch with us. Do you regret this decision? Do you think you've gone a bit too
They'll
far?
be sacked. They can't talk to us. They'd have to have an official person. We'll have an official.
Let's have an official defending that. It seems a bit crazy. Have we got time to talk about the fuel crisis? I'm just asking Charlie in my ear. Have we got time to do a few more? OK, fab. Well, let's talk about the fuel crisis then, because we were talking to our reporter Ellie Costello this morning. She's at the most expensive petrol pump in the country, in Chelsea. But this is a problem up and down the country.
This is huge. And, the annoying thing is, it's an economic shock worse than the 1973 oil crisis. And, obviously, only Eamonn's probably old enough to remember that one here.
We're all very well.
But
my father sitting in queues, just to try and get... We had more strikes than that because we had the Ulster Workers' Council strikes. as well, and the 3-day week and all that. There was a lot of petrol shortages in the 70s.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was obviously triggered by the Arab countries acting to quadruple the price of oil, an embargo, a protest of the West support for Israel during the Yom Kippur. But this is obviously caused by what's going on in Russia and Ukraine at the moment. But the annoying thing with this story is the fact that petrol pumps are already putting, the petrol garages are always putting the prices up straight away. Now they're using
on old stock.
Yeah. On old.
have.
This is the point, Eamonn. On stock they have sitting in their tanks that they paid old prices for. So there was one garage here in the Mail that's been mentioned where literally the price went up 5p in half an hour. It's the stock they've paid for using the old prices. They're just ripping drivers off. We all know this is coming, but
you didn't see nothing yet. Wait till you get to our story with Ellie later on with that. David, Don, thank you both very much indeed. Appreciate it.
Now, the economic crime bill targeting Russian oligarchs in the UK was rushed through the Commons this week as global condemnation of the invasion of Ukraine continues to mount.
OK, well, for many, many years, London has operated as a safe haven for, let's face it, dirty money. It gained the nickname Londongrad. Here's Tom Burgess. He's an investigations correspondent at the Financial Times, and he's author of Kleptopia, How Dark Money is Conquering the World. Tom, good to see you.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm hoping we can hear you.
Just checking you can hear us, Tom. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and see you. Tom, this economic crime bill, will it do any use? Does it go far enough?
It doesn't go far enough. There are useful things in it. There are some tools that will help our law enforcement agencies try to track down the dirty money that's sloshing through our economy, but there are also enormous loopholes, and the key thing is that this is all meaningless if it's not backed up by enforcement. And our law enforcement agencies, things like the National Crime Agency, the Serious Fraud Office, are the front lines of our defences against dirty money. They are farcically under-resourced compared to the kleptocrats and oligarchs that they're up against.
Word you use there, what do you mean by a kleptocrat?
Right, so in the UK, we would hope that corruption is a sign of when things have gone wrong. Yeah, when we discover corruption in a COVID contract or an arms deal or whatever it may be, there's an outrage, there's a scandal, there's newspaper coverage, people resign, there are court cases, there are parliamentary inquiries. A kleptocracy is when corruption becomes the system. Yeah, the purpose of holding power is to loot. And then you use that loot to fortify that power. And this is what I found in the 5 years I worked on my book in Africa, in the former Soviet Union, all over the world. The kleptocracy is taking hold of a greater and greater swathes of the world. They're finding allies in the West and they're uniting.
God, it's depressing. You know, what strikes me, and there's been lots of publicity since the war broke out about the slowness of the UK government in responding to the refugee crisis, and you contrast that with the so-called golden visas, the visas that have been given for decades to Russians because they are minted, and we want that Russian money, dirty Russian money, in the city. I mean, it's a stark contrast, isn't it?
It's a well-made point, I think. I think a lot of people would still find the idea that you can essentially buy nationality is a pretty weird one. Quite apart from the lack of checks that were done on the source of this money. What the invasion of Ukraine is making us do, I think, is choose which side we're on. Ultimately, large parts of our establishment and our professional services have sold themselves over the years in various ways to dirty money, not just from the former Soviet Union, but from all over the world, the Gulf, parts of West Africa, and so on. And that means they are choosing, often for their own personal enrichment, to side with corrupt regimes. And let's not delude ourselves, as we have been for a long time. These regimes, they don't keep power through clever election strategies. They keep power by unleashing violence. In Kazakhstan, I met the survivors of a massacre conducted by the security forces of the kleptocratic ruler there. They told me how they'd been tortured afterwards to give false confessions. I've been to the diamond fields of Zimbabwe, to eastern Kazakhstan, to eastern Congo, where children are starving amid massive mining industry. This is the reality of the kleptocratic world, and we have to choose. Do we want to let the profits of this flow into our political parties flow into our legal system, the law firms that are trying to shut down the free press? Do we want to let this money flow into our universities? Do we want to let it flow into our art galleries? The invasion of Ukraine is a real moment of clarity, I think, when we have to look around us and decide who we stand with.
We had 2 weeks ago on the programme, who do we have?
Bill Browder?
Bill Browder.
Browder, yeah.
And he was here in the studio, and Tom, he was talking about a very interesting aspect of all of this. I mean, you can have all the kleptocrats in the world and you can clamp down on them and you can have an economic crime bill, but they're surrounded by the best brains, the best lawyers, the best defence, and there's very little anybody can do about it. I always find it quite strange if Roman Abramovich, for instance, is a person of interest to the British government. Why are they openly standing back and watching him sell all his loot in the form of his football club and letting him take the money out of the country? You know, so these people, what about the people who surround these people and who are preventing the authorities getting at them?
Yeah, these are sometimes called the enablers, right? The people who allow those who make massive fortunes in ultra-corrupt regimes to transplant their wealth and their reputation into the West. I'll give you an example. I've just spent months fighting off a legal challenge to my book Kleptopia in the High Court a few days ago. To my delight, a judge threw out the claim brought by a London company owned by some oligarchs from the former Soviet Union. But what this illustrates is one aspect of what you're talking about here, which is, we are waking up to the danger of this dirty money, the danger and our complicity in corruption, how we've been complicit in emboldening dictators like Putin, and also to what this dirty money does when it arrives in Western democracies, how it corrupts us too. Now, we may think, okay, great. Follow the money. Well, that's a job for journalists. We've got magnificent journalists. We'll set them loose to hunt down this dirty money that's all around us. But what do we find? There's a massive obstacle in their way, and it's not Putin's hit squads knocking off journalists as they do in Russia. It's not his cyber attack teams taking out newspapers. No, it's the so-called reputation management firms based in London, night and day, working to essentially censor the newspapers and the broadcasters on behalf of their oligarch clients and other rich clients, and basically deciding what you and I get to read without any scrutiny of their own activities.
Does this get you down, Tom? Because it's depressing me. I don't know what ordinary people like us can do about it. I mean, you were incredibly lucky to have won that case, given the kind of legal opposition you would have faced, best brains in the business. I'm assuming you probably can't afford
and financial muscle.
Yeah, and the threat of what that would have been to you if you'd have lost it financially.
Well, I was very lucky to have HarperCollins, my publishers, showed a great deal of spine, and they put together a magnificent legal team of their own. So that, yes, we were very lucky in that respect. And my great friend Catherine Belton, whose book Putin's People came under a similar attack, they had actually much the same publisher and team and did a brilliant job. The point is that these are the handful of cases that come to court because we're lucky enough to have that kind of support. But day in, day out, stories about the oligarchs and other rich and powerful figures are being suppressed, and we're never hearing about it because when the reputation management firms do their work well, no one ever hears about the stories that don't get printed. But I should just say, this is depressing, bleak stuff, and we need to look with a clear eye at the state of our own democracy and the extent to which it's been infiltrated by dirty money. But it is also the case that this, as we look at the heroism of Ukrainians, we are having this clarifying moment and realizing basically what's been on the end of our forks for a long time. Are we going to continue to buy oil and gas from dictators in the knowledge that they will loot it and use that loot to continue to terrorize their people? Are we going to allow our parliamentarians to moonlight for kleptocrats and our legal system to be sometimes hijacked by them? It is a bleak moment for the world, but it's also one that could perhaps shake us awake.
Tom, you've certainly woken us up this morning with all of that. Continued good luck with your investigations at the FT.
Yeah, amazing.
And Tom Burgess is the author of Kleptopia, How Dark Money is Conquering the World. Thank you very much indeed. Nice talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
Now, as we know, the UN have confirmed more than 2 million people have fled the war in the Ukraine, making it the worst refugee crisis since the Second World War.
Well, some of them are relatives of people living here in this country. Our reporter Amelia Harper has been speaking to a woman who fears her mother's trapped and in danger of going hungry in Ukraine.
For every person trying to flee Ukraine, there are many who can't. One of them is Nina, a grandmother stuck in a small village in northern Ukraine, just south of the Belarus border. Her daughter, Natalia Scott, doesn't know if she's okay.
Nobody can contact her. I was looking to find a way to call the landline of like a local village kind of authority or whatever, village hall or whatever, but it wasn't possible. However, I found a person who could manage to phone there, and he was said over phone that we are not allowed to talk, and hung up a phone. So I assume that the people who in charge now, they're not Ukrainians.
Зараз абонент знаходиться поза зоною досяжності. Будь ласка, залиште повідомлення після сигналу.
You don't know if she has food. You don't know how dangerous where she is. I know she doesn't have electricity. I know that she doesn't have food supply. So whatever she had, that's only what she has. And maybe she's in danger of hunger. I don't know. It's all possible, that horrible scenario. So it's just I don't know how to describe the way I feel. It's just horrible.
Across the UK, Ukrainian protesters mourn for the fate of their families.
My heart is broken. My heart is broken for every person who has been hurt, who's been terrorised, who's been made to leave their homes and built and hide in cellars because of that maniac. That's how I feel. But at the same time, I'm so proud of our nation.
16-year-old Stefan reflects on what life is like for his relatives.
I think about my family there. I visit them, I've been there. I see the pictures of the city that I've walked around, the streets, the monuments I've seen, and they're not the same. It's hard to concentrate in school. It's hard to do my homework properly when I'm thinking about whilst I'm in the warmth of my home with good clothing, a soft bed, what my family doing? Making improvised arms, things like making Molotov cocktails. Whilst I'm there sitting in a comfy chair writing about something to do with biology. I can't stand it.
Help our refugees! Help our refugees! Help our refugees!
From the UK, the message is clear. Amelia Harper, GB News.
Well, stay with us. After the break, we're going to be speaking to lots of people about the ongoing situation in Ukraine, including a journalist from the Moscow Times. That's after your Thursday forecast.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern. It's a sunny start in places this morning, but there will be further showers at times through the rest of the day. It will, however, be less windy compared with yesterday. A weather front that brought some heavy rain and strong winds to the northwest yesterday morning. Well, it's still with us, but it's slowly easing its way to the east, and it's a weaker feature now. So mostly it's an area of cloud that straddles much of the UK, and outbreaks of mainly light rain for Scotland, for northern England during the rest of the morning, with brighter skies following for a time across Wales, into the Midlands and southern England, although still a lot of cloud on the map. Northern Ireland seeing hazy sunshine, staying dry here and less windy for many of us compared to yesterday. It's mild as well, 13 or 14 Celsius in the southeast. We're looking at 10 for Glasgow, 9 for Belfast. Into the evening, and further spells of rain or showers move up from the south. So on and off rain, I think, for many overnight as this system moves northwards. A lot of cloud, and the winds pick up once again through the hours of darkness. So that means that it will be a frost-free night, with most places seeing temperatures stay up at 7 to 9 Celsius. Then as we start off Friday, watch out for those showers first thing, but there will be some drier and brighter interludes at times. However, towards the southwest, a more prolonged band of rain and some heavy stuff with it moves into the southwest, crosses Wales, central southern England, then the Midlands by lunchtime. Now that breaks up into showers by the afternoon, so that for most, Friday afternoon is looking showery. There'll be some sunshine in between the showers, and it will stay blustery, risk of gales for exposed western coasts. But further showers are to come for the weekend. They'll ease away for a time on Saturday with some sunshine for many for at least a few hours before more wind and rain arrives on Saturday evening, continuing into Sunday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
President Zelensky describes the Russian bombing of a maternity hospital as the ultimate proof of genocide against Ukraine.
Good morning. It's exactly 8 o'clock on the 10th of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
OK, we are live right across the world on your TV, on your radio, online. We want to hear from you, and here's what's leading the news this morning.
There's a desperate search for survivors in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol after a maternity hospital was directly hit by Russian rockets. The mayor of Zhytomyr has said 2 more hospitals have been damaged in Russian airstrikes this morning.
It comes as US officials raise concerns that Russia could be setting the stage for the use of chemical weapons after Kremlin officials alleged that the US had been supporting a bioweapons program in Ukraine.
Also coming up in the programme, 107 years after it sank in the Antarctic, Sir Ernest Shackleton's ship Endurance has finally been found. We'll have the great explorer's granddaughter here in the studio with us.
Absolutely incredible. Look at how intact that is.
Would you go down there and have a look at that if you could?
Apparently
Too cold.
Apparently they can't even get it out because it's 3,000 metres down.
Oh, of course.
So I'm not sure
detail.
what's going to happen. I thought they were absolutely just going to refloat that and would get it up, and it would just be, what a museum.
Yeah, it'd be incredible.
But no, it's not going to be. If you've got a view on that, you've got a view on any of our stories or discussions, here's what you do.
Yeah, you get in touch on email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can use Twitter @gbnews.
Huge numbers of civilians have been fleeing cities across Ukraine in what is the fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since the Second World War.
Yes, many people have headed towards Poland, where they're being greeted by teams of volunteers serving free food, drinks and clothes to those who need it.
Well, our reporter Bradley Harris caught up with a family from Spain who wanted to do their bit to help.
Over 2 million people have fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion 2 weeks ago. Poland shares a 310-mile border with Ukraine and has taken in the majority of Ukrainians. Aid efforts are largely operated by volunteers, and people from all over the world have come to join the cause. A family from Barcelona travelled 2 days by car to get to the main border crossing in Medica. Packed with supplies, they told me why. My best friend is Ukrainian, and between all my friends we arranged to collect items such as medicine, baby food and clothes. I come with my aunt to deliver what we have collected. We have spent 2 days travelling from Spain, and we have been in different parts of Poland where there are Ukrainian refugees. We have delivered packets of food for them. Adriana is from Ukraine and needs help finding a new life, but she's confident there is a brighter future in her country.
I think everything will be okay because I hope we have amazing future. We can stand up and be the best country.
Bradley Harris, GB News, Medica.
The Prime Minister is set to step up sanctions against Russia this morning after that horrific attack on a hospital and indeed a number of hospitals in Ukraine.
Yeah, it says nearly 35,000 people were rescued via humanitarian corridors, which we're being told have reopened again this morning. Well, one person we've been in touch with throughout, well, before the crisis actually, is the journalist at the Moscow Times, Jake Cordell. Jake, we've been worrying about you actually, and the rules have changed about free speech in Russia, and you simply weren't feeling able to do your job anymore. So you fled. Tell us your decision and where you're talking to us from this morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, so actually, like many journalists, Russian and foreign, the situation in Russia deteriorated quite quickly since the start of the war. I think quicker than most people expected. There was pressure on independent media reporting. First of all, there were laws that you can't say the word war or invasion to talk about Russia's war and invasion of Ukraine. And then I think over the weekend a law was passed which basically criminalized the use of non-official sources to talk about the war. So basically, if you want to talk about the war in your reporting from Russia, you have to use only official government sources. And as we know, official government sources in Russia are giving nowhere near the full picture of what's going on. They're still talking about this being a liberation, special military operation limited to the Donbass. So mainly it was Russian journalists who decided that they needed to move abroad to be able to continue working independently, or if they stayed in Russia, they simply stopped their reporting of the military side of the war. Many foreign journalists also left and now reporting from overseas. And the idea is to wait and see what happens with this law. Like many laws in Russia, it's unclear how this will exactly be implemented. And there are still foreign journalists reporting in Russia, but quite a lot made the decision that, at least for the short term, it was better to move abroad, see how this panned out, and then potentially return later when we know what's going on.
But Jake, in the meantime, what is the fate of the Moscow Times? Do you compile the Moscow Times from London or from outside Moscow, or does it still continue in some form in Russia?
No, so Moscow Times is online-only publication, so it continues from as before. If you go on our website now, you'll see we have live blog of all the updates. We have reporting done by correspondents from outside the country. You know, the coronavirus pandemic was quite good at getting people used to, you know, doing lots of stuff online, reporting online, talking to sources online over messages and stuff. So that's able to continue, but almost basically interrupted.
What are you reporting on? What can you actually do that people in Russia will not know about?
So, well, lots of people in Russia won't know about the extent of the military campaign, and there's really only so much independent media can do to break through that, because 2/3 of Russians rely only on state TV for their news. Now that may be changing, because as we see, the Russian government has started to give a little bit more clues as to the extent of the military effort. So they've said that they've lost about 500 soldiers. The real toll is probably a lot higher than that. They've also said yesterday, for the first time, they're using conscripts in the fighting. So these are 18, 19-year-old boys, men doing their their military service. So there is a feeling that perhaps as the Russian government starts to admit that the campaign is a little bit bigger than they first thought, Russians may then turn to other sources of information to try and find out what exactly is going on. And when they do that, of course, they'll be turning mainly to Russian independent news, which does exist. But as I say, 2/3 of Russians rely only on state TV, and they're getting a very limited picture of what's going on. So in terms of talking to the Russian public and explaining what's going on, you're really looking mainly at an urban, liberal, educated class in the cities as the kind of target audience for independent journalism in Russia at the moment.
And Jake, look, like Eamonn and I, journalists are a well-connected bunch. You'll have lots of journalist friends still in Moscow. Are you hearing stories about people, worried for their own safety? And as you say, the sort of urban intellectual elite that does follow a bit of Russian independent news, that is going to be severely hampered by these rules.
Yeah, for sure. And we're seeing a big exodus. We talk about a few journalists, but the real exodus from Russia right now is taking place among that class. People who work in IT companies, kind of young, middle class, wealthy families. They really kind of don't see a future in Russia anymore and are leaving as well. And, you've seen all the airspace bans that have been hit with Russia. So if you want to look how much like flight tickets are, you'll see how strong the demand is right now to leave Russia. In terms of the reporters that are going on the ground, I think the main concern is for Russian reporters who are staying in Russia. The Kremlin has pushed down very hard on Russians. It's labeled them foreign agents. It conducts searches of their apartments. It puts them on registers. It follows them around. It intimidates them and their sources. So the main concern is there. Foreign journalists have not been off limits, but there's been a sense that they're not as important for the Russian government to worry about. However, we saw with this new law that criminalizes the use of non-government sources, specific comments from the government that it would include foreign correspondents. And I think that is a bit of a shift. It's quite a big shift from what's gone on before. As I said, it depends how laws are going to be enforced. Russia has a system where it kind of creates a legal system where you can never be 100% compliant, so that it can always find something to kind of push against you. So we really are now just waiting to see how this law is used. It hasn't yet been used. There hasn't been any open cases yet. So we're waiting to see what happens with that.
OK.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one last question, because we've been talking a lot about what the impact of the sanctions will be and all these Western companies, the likes of McDonald's, Starbucks, pulling out. The big concern is that actually it will increase anti-Western sentiment amongst Russians who actually won't blame Putin, but will see it as being bullied by the West. And I wondered if you just had a take on that, given your contacts back in Moscow.
I think that's right. I think it divides how you'd expect it to divide. If you're anti-Kremlin and you're pro-Western anyway, and you're living in Moscow and you see that McDonald's is closing, IKEA is closing, you can't get Starbucks anymore, Apple's not working, you can't buy an own iPhone, you're going to be more anti-Kremlin. You're going to blame the Kremlin for what's going on. You're going to see that this is a response to the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine. If you're living out of the cities, you don't particularly go to McDonald's anyway, you don't have a McDonald's in your town, you don't use Western technology, you are going to be fed the propaganda that this is the West ganging up on Russia, and the anti-West sentiment is very strong in Russia anyway, and that's only likely to harden. Question is, as people notice when they go to the supermarkets that their food's becoming 20% more expensive in a week, which is already happening, now they may blame the West for that, but they're also going to blame their government for maybe not doing enough to sort them out. So how that develops over the next few weeks, it could be a hardening of both anti-West and anti-government sentiment.
Jake Cordell, we're really pleased that you're safe and well. Next time, come into the studio and see us. We'd love to see you in person. And, keep in touch.
Keep in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Defence and security analysts have told GB News that a Russian private military company sanctioned by the West and linked to allegations of war crimes is almost certainly on the ground and involved in fighting in Ukraine.
Yeah, they're known as the Wagner Group. The Kremlin denies it even exists, but the infamous and secretive organisation is made up of more than 5,000, mainly former members of the Russian military. And our security editor, Mark White, has been examining the background of this group.
A shadowy organisation gathering hard facts on the activities of the Wagner Group is far from easy. But they are, we've been told, active in Ukraine, likely involved in highly dubious activities. However, as Moscow doesn't even acknowledge their existence, Vladimir Putin has plausible deniability of whatever they're up to. The founder and leader of the group is a sinister, shaven-headed fellow by the name of Dmitry Utkin, a former senior officer in Russia's Spetsnaz Special Forces. Indeed, the Wagner name, we're told, is derived from his Spetsnaz code name, which apparently reflects his appreciation of the Third Reich and Hitler's favourite composer. Under Russian law, private military companies are illegal, publicly at least.
To call them a company would be a stretch, as there are no visible traces of this company existing. However, it is being deemed as an asset of plausible deniability by the Kremlin to be utilised for various different conflicts around the world. And they've been active not only in Central Africa, Venezuela, Syria, but also other parts of the world where it may be, again, for various reasons, not pragmatic for the Russian government to utilise their own state troops.
It was during deployments here in Syria and Central Africa several years ago that Wagner Group mercenaries were linked to allegations of war crimes, including torture, rape and murder. The wider group is now believed to be under the ownership of Yevgeny Prigozhin, a former criminal and billionaire restaurant owner nicknamed Putin's Chef. He's one of a number of Russian elites facing Western sanctions. The West does, of course, also employ the services of private military contractors, groups like the US company Blackwater. Some of their employees were convicted and later pardoned in the killing of a number of Iraqi civilians in 2007. But Western contractors are at least regulated, and there's official oversight of their activities, unlike their Russian counterparts.
We've used private security companies to guard diplomats. We use them in Iraq, we the West that is, use them in Iraq, but mostly for non-military operations. The ones we're talking about here, that doesn't apply to. They're a different breed, if you like, and they're operating under different conditions. Whether they're accountable to the local military commanders on the ground or whether they're working back to some organisation in Moscow or elsewhere, I honestly don't know. But the reality is that in no way are they accountable in the same way that we in the West make our private companies accountable.
So are Wagner Group mercenaries now actively hunting Ukraine's leadership, including President Zelensky? Some with knowledge of their activities certainly believe so.
From what we understand in Ukraine right now, there is a kill team that are undertaking potential assassinations against key persons, including obviously Zelensky, that are very vocal in the charge for both morale for Ukrainian people, but also for the international community.
Whether their mission actually includes a leadership assassination command, defence and security analysts have told us they will certainly be involved in sabotage, false flag operations, and the likely interrogation and torture of captured Ukrainians, the kind of dirty jobs Vladimir Putin might want to publicly distance himself from.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. The fuel situation, Natalie tells me from South Yorkshire, there are many petrol stations here in South Yorkshire simply not advertising their prices. One forecourt excuse I asked for, and they said they had water damage for that. It's a big dodge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a big dodge. Listen to this. Heating oil. When I last ordered it a month ago, it was 72 pence a litre. It's now just under £2 a litre. It's going through the roof.
What are they doing to us? You know, stay with us, because right after this break, we're going to be at the country's most expensive petrol station. Have a guess at how much you think it's going to come in per litre.
Yeah, and where it is. Have a guess about that as well.
Straight after the weather update.
Hello, I'm Eamonn McGivern. It's a sunny start in places this morning, but there will be further showers at times through the rest of the day. It will, however, be less windy compared with yesterday. A weather front that brought some heavy rain and strong winds to the northwest yesterday morning. Well, it's still with us, but it's slowly easing its way to the east, and it's a weaker feature now. So mostly it's an area of cloud that straddles much of the UK, and outbreaks of mainly light rain for Scotland, for northern England during the rest of the morning, with brighter skies following for a time across Wales, into the Midlands and southern England. Although still a lot of cloud on the map. Northern Ireland seeing hazy sunshine, staying dry here, and less windy for many of us compared to yesterday. It's mild as well, 13 or 14 Celsius in the southeast. We're looking at 10 for Glasgow, 9 for Belfast. Into the evening, and further spells of rain or showers move up from the south. So on and off rain, I think, for many overnight as this system moves northwards. A lot of cloud, and the winds pick up once again through the hours of darkness. So that means that it will be a frost-free night, with most places seeing temperatures stay up at 7 to 9 Celsius. Then as we start off Friday, watch out for those showers first thing, but there will be some drier and brighter interludes at times. However, towards the southwest, a more prolonged band of rain and some heavy stuff with it moves into the southwest, crosses Wales, central southern England, then the Midlands by lunchtime. Now that breaks up into showers by the afternoon, so that for most, Friday afternoon is looking showery. There'll be some sunshine in between the showers, and it will stay blustery, risk of gales for exposed western coasts. But further showers are to come for the weekend. They'll ease away for a time on Saturday with some sunshine for many for at least a few hours before more wind and rain arrives on Saturday evening, continuing into Sunday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
This fuel situation and what's happening in terms of prices, availability, prices being advertised, petrol stations buying or marking up old stock has really got you hot under the collar today. So we're going to be reflecting this very, very shortly, and throughout the programme this morning. What we want you to do is to get in touch with us, tell us your story. Remember, it affects you, it affects us, it affects so many other people in the rest of the country. Let us know and we'll get the message out there.
Yeah, did you live through that 1973 oil crisis, the last time the petrol pumps were looking as crazy as they are at the moment? Let us know your experiences as well. I want to bring you up to date on some breaking news this morning. We're hearing from the Armed Forces Minister James Heappey that overnight the Home Office has indicated that they are looking at expanding the programme and looking at a number of policy checks to enable more refugees to get into the UK. That's after widespread condemnation for prioritising bureaucracy over the welfare of those fleeing war, well behind countries like Germany, France, Italy, Spain. We'll keep a close eye on those developments from the Home Office throughout the day.
The email address on your screen right now, take a note of that, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Get straight in touch with us with Twitter @GBNews as well. Here are the other stories, the top stories that we've got on this Thursday morning.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia's attack on a maternity hospital in Mariupol is proof that genocide is taking place. Boris Johnson's promising to impose maximum economic cost for Russia after that attack. He says it shows Putin's careless disregard for international humanitarian law.
42% of families with children living at home are expecting to take on additional debt to deal with soaring energy bills. A financial confidence tracker also shows that a third of families say they're struggling to pay their household bills.
Half of local authorities don't employ specialist teachers for pupils with both sight and hearing loss. A report from the disability charity Sense revealed 52% of councils don't have any multi-sensory teachers for nearly 4,000 affected pupils.
Salaries for new recruits have increased at the second fastest rate in 24 years. New research also shows that vacancies increased in February at the quickest pace in 3 months, with a big demand for staff in computing, hotel and catering, as well as clerical work.
OK, we're talking about fuel all morning, and where is the most expensive place in the country to fill up your car? Let's find out from our South East of England reporter, Ellie Costello. Very good morning to you, Ellie. Where are you, and how much is it going to set people back to fill up their car where you are?
Good morning, Isabel and Eamonn. Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, I'm in Chelsea in West London, really affluent, leafy area, and this is the most expensive petrol pump in the country. And I did do some investigative work for you this morning because there are no advertising signs here with the prices of the fuel. So it's actually impossible to know unless you actually go around and look at the individual pumps to see how much the previous person paid. So that's what I did for you this morning. Here they are charging £2.18 per litre for petrol and £2.29 per litre for diesel. So absolutely eye-watering prices. Now, I can pretty safely say that nobody has come through the petrol station and actually completed a purchase this morning. Lots of people are coming in and then driving straight back out, probably because they've seen those prices. But what has happened this morning is lots of cabbies have stopped here by our camera kit and said, you're not going to find anyone going in there. It's far too expensive. And it turns out that this petrol station is actually infamous in the black cabbie community for being really, really expensive, especially at this time. So I've spent the last hour hailing down black cabs to speak to them. This is what they told me.
Scandalous.
Scandalous. And would you stop here?
Well, when there's a petrol shortage, I did stop here, yeah.
And how much was that then?
I can't remember. I think it's about 190, something like that, 170. I can't remember.
Yeah, I just wouldn't entertain it really, you know. Try and find somewhere a bit more reasonable, you know, which is very difficult at the moment. But this place is notoriously terrible, so no, definitely not.
And is this something that cabbies would avoid? Is this known in your industry?
Oh yeah, this is the worst one round here, although it's quite an expensive area, but this one is definitely not to be visited. Yeah. You only see A-listers turn up at this petrol station, yeah.
Always been more expensive than the regular petrol station. I wouldn't like to say how many p more, probably at least 20, 25p a litre more.
Do you want to know how much it is this morning?
No, you don't want to shock me into it.
£2.19 a litre.
Oh, is that all? Mind you, yesterday in Dulwich it was £1.99, so it's of an area, isn't it? You go to a posh area, you're going to pay posh prices.
So, Ellie, right, so put us in the picture. If you went in with an average family saloon and you want to fill up, what is it going to cost you there at that station in Chelsea?
Right, you're putting me on the spot here. So a family car average is about 55 litres, right? So let's say it's £2.19 here. It's going to be £110 about, roughly, to fill up your car. I mean, it's huge amounts of money. And one thing about Chelsea is, obviously, you heard there with the cabbies, this is a really affluent area, and the most SUVs are actually purchased here in Kensington and Chelsea. So let's say you drive a Range Rover, which has a really high fuel capacity. I think it's about 100 litres. Well, you're looking at way over £200 to fill up at this petrol station. So that would be, perhaps lots of people would say, OK, if you're driving a Range Rover in Chelsea, you can probably afford £200 on a fuel bill. But for, you know, ordinary people, I've seen lots of builders' vans that are coming past at this time of the morning. They need their vans to get around to work. And around here, there aren't many petrol stations. I think there's 4 in the local area. So part of the problem is it's this captive market, and you need to pay these prices in order to get around here.
Quite depressing, Ellie. Quite depressing indeed. Thank you very much indeed. We want to move on and look at the bigger picture with this, and to help us try and understand this fuel price increase. Here's the chairman and the CEO of Energy Council. She's Cornelia Meyer, who joins us now today from, I think you're in Switzerland, Cornelia, yeah?
Yeah, and I'm not the chairman of the Energy Council. I'm the CEO of Maya Resources, but yeah.
Oh. No, that's very important.
It is important. Very Sorry, we got that wrong. Yeah.
But tell us about your company and what people want to do here, and the energy. The G7 energy ministers are meeting today. What can anybody do about this? There's lots of calls here in Britain that the government should get rid of taxation on petrol, for instance.
That would help, but you have competing issues here, right? On one hand, you want to do energy transition, and what we want to do is we want to make sure we wean ourselves off our dependence on fossil fuels. On the other hand, in the meantime, now the prices are so high, probably you need to get rid of some of taxation, especially for lower income people. Look, in the UK, we have many households who have to choose between food and heat, and that's just not acceptable.
Well, also, there's another competing issue here, and this is something President Biden, of course, a member of the G7, has been warning about, and that is people profiteering from this. And that's a classic example in the reporter we were speaking to a moment ago. People are making personal gain from upping prices at the moment.
Well, there is some of that, but if you look at it, the crude prices are so high because of the sanctions and because there's just not enough oil to go around. There's not enough production to go around to quell this thirst for oil for the demand. And OPEC plus, the oil exporting countries and their 10 allies, which are led by Russia, have very little spare capacity. So the question is, where is that incremental barrel coming from that will lower prices? Because the only real thing that can help you when you have such high demand is more supply.
I don't understand, Cornelia. Earlier you said there that maybe we should give more help on fuel prices to lower income people. Yeah. How do you actually do that at a petrol station, at the pumps?
Well, at the pumps, that's very hard. I mean, that's when we're talking cars. With gas, that's easier. You give them fuel discounts. Well, you might think of, it's very hard. You might think of some transfer payments or some whatever coupons, some idea of that they can go around. Your reporter talked about a builder. He needs this car to get around, and other working class people need those cars to get around. So getting some sort of transfer payments in the form of coupons or whatever to them might help, but it's clearly not sustainable for these prices are not sustainable for normal or lower income bracket households.
And look, you said that the only solution of this is more supply. Is there another solution of this alternative types of fuel? I mean, is it time that we're less dependent on fossil fuels and we work quickly and swiftly to try and become less dependent on them?
Well, that's another thought, and energy transition tries to achieve that. But when you shift something, energy is a very long cycle business, and when you shift things, it will take time. This is not a light switch that you can change. So the whole thing about energy transition, in my view, is that we are not thoughtful enough of the time it takes to get it done and of the interim steps that it takes to get done, and maybe now is the time to sit at the drawing board and say, okay, what is realistic here?
Cornelia, final point. What is realistic in terms of how long we should expect these higher prices? Are they here to stay? Are they here for a very long time? Or are they here certainly while the Ukraine invasion stays?
They're certainly here until the Ukraine invasion stays, but even then, it doesn't go away. When you look at OPEC plus these producers, they have a policy of upping their production by 400,000 barrels a day, but the spare capacity is so low that in January, for instance, they only went up 160,000 barrels a day because some of the countries, Libya, Nigeria, and so on, just can't keep up, and only Saudi Arabia Arabia, Ukraine, and Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Iraq have some spare capacity. There is Iran, but we need to get ahead with the nuclear deal, and that's 1.2 to 1.3 million barrels a day. If we take out 8 million barrels a day from Russia, that will not be the be all and end all.
Thank you, Cornelia Meyer. Really appreciate your analysis. She's an energy expert. Thank you very much. Some breaking news.
Yeah, I want to bring you a breaking update on the story we've been covering all morning, and this is the absolutely horrific story of the maternity hospital that was targeted in Mariupol yesterday. We were being told 17 injured in that airstrike. Well, this morning, the deputy mayor of Mariupol, his name is Sergei Orlov, he's been speaking to reporters, and he says that at least 3 people were killed in that attack, including one 6-year-old child. And he's gone on to say that he's absolutely certain that the Russians knew about this facility, and it is their 3rd hospital that they have destroyed in the city. So that is the breaking line that the deputy mayor of Mariupol has said at least 3 were killed in that attack, including one 6-year-old. You've got to remember, of course, the vast majority of people in that hospital were not just pregnant women, but women who were in labour.
Very sad news. That story, in a version of the British newspapers, have it right across all the front pages, and we'll be going inside the newspapers right after this short break with David Wooding and Dawn Neeson back after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The papers on this Thursday morning. We begin with the Telegraph. This is what it says on their front page.
Yeah, the warning, Russia may be planning a chemical attack in the vein of Assad's Syrian regime.
Time shows that picture of the attack on the maternity hospital aiming at mothers and babies.
The Sun describes Russia's actions as evil upon evil.
And here in the studio to go through those newspapers, David Wooding, who's the political editor for The Sun on Sunday, and Dawn Neeson, who's edited more papers than you could shake a stick at, basically. Good morning to both of you. David, visas is where we're going to begin. It's The Times. It's page 10.
Yes, there's a lot of criticism being aimed at the government in general and the Home Office and Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, in general, in specifically, I mean, in particular, because we seem to be slow out the traps in helping give refuge to people fleeing war in Ukraine. Now, the Home Secretary is going to announce today that 7,000 Ukrainians living in Britain will be able to bring their families here. But there's increasing frustration about the slowness of this sponsorship scheme to get people into Britain. I mean, Poland have taken over 1 million people already, and Britain seems to be so slow at getting out the traps.
In contrast to the visas we gave to the Russians, the golden visas.
Well, exactly. I mean,
quite.
The strange thing is, in this country, immigration has become, and asylum has become a bit of a problem. Over the centuries, we've been very good. The Huguenots came here fleeing religious oppression. There was the Vietnamese boat people, the Syrians.
Kinder transport.
Yes, all those people came here. And then in the 1990s, when Tony Blair opened up the borders, immigration suddenly became a hot issue, and the European expansion, and people were able to come here freely. And of course, that led to the Brexit referendum. And we're in danger of losing our reputation of being kind and welcoming to refugees. And now, the poll we ran in the Sun on Sunday last weekend showed that people are willing to have hundreds of thousands of refugees here, but the government seem to be very slow off the mark, and the Home Office, most of them are still working from home, I'm told. Are very
so is
slow
this
getting
Priti Patel's fault, or is it the civil service?
Well, that's the difficult question. At the end of the day, the buck stops with the Home Secretary.
Yeah.
Well, she is in charge, isn't she? I mean, surely she should be the one making the decisions and pushing them through. I mean,
maybe she got the temperature wrong completely on this one, because, you know, historically, refugees have not been so welcome because their conflicts haven't been televised in a way that this one's televised.
The other bad optic is that she's saying it's very difficult to get all these visas sorted out, and we're trying our best and we're working in difficult circumstances. We get all that. But these are women and children fleeing war, and yet it seems to be easy for people to get in via boats across the channel.
I think that's a big issue a lot of people have, isn't it? And it's quite clear. I mean, I do agree that we can't just waive the visa system. We do need to have checks in place for security issues, so I completely agree with that. But it's just the lack of organisation, isn't it? We don't even know where the processing centres are. You know, you apply in one place, you apply in another. You've got people turning up in France being told to go back to Paris to process their application.
And is there a bigger threat of security issues for us in the UK? I mean, why are other countries not so fearful as we are? I don't understand why all these countries seem to be opening the gates and we're afraid that Russian spies are flooding in. I don't understand the contrast. But let's move on to the Mail. You've chosen this story, Dawn, and I'm really pleased you chose this because the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate, yesterday was talking about explaining the war to children. She said that her children were talking about it, and there'll be lots of parents watching this at home who've got kids pottering around in the background, picking up little bits and bobs. My own children have asked me some really difficult questions, like why? Why has Putin done this? And I don't know what to say. I say, I don't know, he's a bad man. But why is he a bad man, Mummy? What do you say to them?
Well, I don't know. I mean, without terrorising them. I mean, this is what we were talking about earlier on, sort of like when, you know, Dave and I, when we were youngsters, and the whole Cold War threat and the nuclear threat, and, you know, you were told, you know, don't worry, children, you'll have time to get home from school when they drop the bombs. It's like, oh, great, thanks. So it's what you do say to children. And this is our Kate and William. It's a visit in the Ukrainian Culture Centre in Holland Park, bearing a gift of 2 trays of homemade chocolate brownies and granola bars. And Kate got very emotional when she was trying to tell her children, I mean, George, Charlotte and Louis, what's going on. And she goes, I don't know, like you were saying as well, I don't know what to say to them because, you know, these are little kids. I mean, you know, George is 8, isn't he? So how do you do it without terrorising them, but explain what's going on and not to worry? And you've got to think, children's mental health have gone through the mill over the past couple of years with the pandemic, and now they're coping with this. You know, education has, you know, not been there to support them, and now they've got this on top of everything else. I mean, you've got to feel for them. But I mean, you know, it's the lovely pictures of Kate, and she's wearing her Stand With Ukraine badge as well, and wearing Ukrainian blue. So, you know, she's trying to do as much as any of us can do at the moment, I think.
No, she's highlighting a really important issue.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really hard to protect your kids from hearing about it. They're hearing about it everywhere. It's everywhere, isn't it?
It's absolutely.
And it does provoke some really difficult conversations. And I always take the view, you can't lie to them. You
can't.
can be as honest as you can, but you can't lie to them. OK, where should we go next? What do you fancy, Eamonn?
I'm just laughing at you not lying to your children. I spent a lot.
I know.
You'll learn.
I don't like lying at all.
Daddy, we're going to be there shortly. I'll be there in a few minutes. That's fine.
I can't do it.
Tooth
I hate
Fairy,
lying.
Father Christmas, Easter Bunny.
Oh,
okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right.
They don't know. You're the boss. Now, we're talking about parents and children. A third of young adult Britons live with their parents, David. Now, this is taken from the Mail.
Yes. 3.6 million young people aged 20 to 34 live at home with their parents still, which is
You're still a young
figure.
person at 34, are you?
Well, these days, people don't grow up until they have kids, I don't think.
Yes. 28% of the population, and it's up from 24% according to the Office for National Statistics. The interesting thing is, most of these are men. If you look at the numbers who
Isabel and I are not surprised by this fact, by the way.
Mummy's still doing the laundry.
Actually, ironing my socks. They need... among women, over the age of 34, only 3% of women are still at home, but 11% of men over the age of 34 are still at home. This is all down, it's said, to the cost of a deposit required to buy a house, caused by the housing shortage, and also the increasing house prices in comparison to income, which is making it all very difficult. Incidentally, it also says that living alone has gone up, and in Scotland, the northeast and northwest, more than a third of the people live alone.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and that all just increases demand for properties, which in turn increases prices, and more people are divorcing, people are living longer, and it is a huge problem, the housing crisis. And, you know, I think a lot of people are just giving up on the dream of ever owning a house.
I think so, and even renting is just through the roof now, and you have to house share. So during the pandemic, I mean, it's like, everyone working from home. It's lovely if you've got your own spacious property, but if you're house sharing, like a lot of youngsters were, and you've got one room and you've got to work and live in that room.
On the next page in the Mail, this is a report that says the Labour Party still can't actually define what makes a woman, what a woman is. Explain that one, Dawn.
Yes, thank you, Eamonn. Right, OK. Yeah, this is Yvette Cooper, yesterday became the second Labour frontbencher to decline to define what a woman is. Now, obviously, the whole conversation was based around International Women's Day. And Yvette Cooper, when she was asked to define what a woman is, which is basically an adult human female, there I've said it, cancel me if you like, but that's what it is, she refused to go down that rabbit hole. And she used the phrase rabbit hole several times when she was pressed on what a woman is. And it's like, how can, we are almost 51% of the population, Isabel. How can you ever take Labour seriously when they don't even know what we are? Now, I get it's the whole issue around the transgender rights, etc., etc. But saying you're a woman and defining what a woman is does not make you transphobic.
Yeah, and we've been oppressed for thousands of years.
Right.
We're only just beginning to find our voices, and it's being taken away again.
Thank you. The first women's rights meeting was held in 1860-something in America. And we've been fighting to have our voices heard since then. And now we're being... Well, we're just people with cervixes.
So where does that leave you with, was it Shania Twain that sang, I feel like a woman, da, 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 da. So will she be sort of
She's cancelled,
yeah.
Although, having said that, you and David could both feel like a woman today and be women today. If you wanted.
Well, there's no problem with that. I just don't see why we have to cancel out women, and why Yvette Cooper, I think it was Annalise Dodds
Annalise Dodds
aren't able to define
what a woman.
I mean, you obviously feel like a woman, but could you actually define it? If someone said to you, what does it mean?
Well, I think the word says it, doesn't it? Why do we have to explain? I don't have to define what a man is.
The definition of it
is a woman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't. This is the issue I have with this, Isabel. We are people. If you go to sort of like health cancer website checks. People with cervixes, OK, fine, OK, because that does include
some women don't have cervixes, by the way.
No, quite. But if you go to, say, the prostate cancer one, it's men. Why isn't it people with prostates?
Yeah, but I think, look, I'm going to probably get a lot of hate for this, but what I do think, this awful horror that's unfolding in Ukraine has done, not only has it united the West in 2 weeks in a way that nobody could have hoped for in recent times, it's also stopped us perhaps a little bit navel-gazing and obsessing over semantics and
you
labels.
hope so.
And actually, maybe there's more important things going on.
We've got a good story coming up shortly, probably just after 9 o'clock. Our guest is running late. And she is the granddaughter of Ernest Shackleton. Wow. And on Saturday, he was 100 years dead. and that was the day they found his boat.
Wow, I must stay and watch that. I mean, this is an incredible story, an incredible spread. The graphics are real boys' own stuff. Because there we have Frozen in Time, one of the greatest shipwrecks of all time, which tells one of the greatest survival and escape stories of all time. I think it's the biggest find since the Titanic. It sank in 1915, 144-foot ship, the Endurance, which was used to circumnavigate the Antarctic with Shackleton in 1915. Now, the depth here, 10,000 feet, to try and understand the depth, that's a British nuclear sub goes to 1,000 feet.
Oh, right, OK.
A whale goes to about 4,000 feet, a sperm whale. So it's really deep in the depths. There's no light down there. They used drones with lights to go on. When they found it, it had gleaming portholes, still as they were, polished wooden decks, lovely golden brown, and it hasn't been eaten by worms
because it's so well preserved. Because the temperature's down there.
-35,
like a freezer.
and there's been no trees in the Antarctic for 30 million years. So there are no organisms or wood-eating worms to destroy it.
I suppose that means nobody's going to be able to go down and see it, really, apart from these drones, because it's just inhospitable.
Yeah, but there will be a programme going out on it, I understand, and there's these pictures in the papers today which are absolutely incredible. And there's a suggestion they won't be able to get it up for about 50 years if they do ever raise it from the depths of the
I think we should leave it there, don't you?
Yeah.
I think it's an amazing story and the pictures are stunning, but it just feels right to leave it.
Well, where would they put it if they did extract it in 50 years' time? That's the next big question.
Well, they'd have to bring it back to a dry dock where they'd have to keep it wet constantly with
Was it a
hoses
completely
and things on
British crew aboard? These are difficult questions. Sorry, I know we're not all experts on the Endurance, obviously.
Well, what I do know is that he walked away from it. Yeah, he was Irish.
Yeah.
And he stood to be an MP and lost in Dundee as a member of the Unionist Party.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so do you know when they say the Conservative and Unionist Party? Used to be up in Scotland there as well. But absolutely amazing. I do think they should drag it up. Because everybody walked off it. Well, Southampton, put it wherever you want. Plymouth, that left from Plymouth.
Yeah.
He was from Dundee, born in Kildare. So take your pick.
Oh, I think it should be where he was from.
Yes.
Kildare.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. We'd go and visit it, wouldn't we?
But it's like the Titanic exhibition. Have you been to the Titanic exhibition? And you touch that block of ice, and that was the temperature of the water those people in, and that is really...
Yeah. I mean, you look at people like Shackleton and you say, why? Why did you do that?
Well, he died really young as well. He died,
47.
didn't he? Yeah.
47, heart attack.
And the way they survived, when the thing was stuck for months, the ship was stuck there for months, they camped on the ice floes and they drifted so many miles over several months. And then in the end, they got in a boat the size of one of these dinghies used for coming across the channel. And 5 of them got in and travelled about 800 miles to raise help.
Wow.
I mean, that was
800 miles.
Yeah.
And that's where he was buried, I think, where he was found,
Yeah.
the island of Georgia, and his wife wanted him buried there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Very fitting name for the boat, then, isn't it?
Yeah, Endurance. Well, that's whis granddaughter, Alexandra, who'll be joining us in the studio. She's a bit caught up in traffic at the moment, but she's going to be an absolutely fantastic interview. So stay with us for that. We're hoping just after 9 o'clock for that.
David, Don, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, as ever. We'll see you next Thursday.
And back to Ukraine, we've just been hearing that a strike on that maternity hospital killed 3 people.
Yes, and as we know, the refugee crisis as a result of people fleeing from scenes like that is ongoing. Our reporter Paul Hawkins is in Kisvárda in Hungary for us this morning. Paul, really interesting talking to you, because what you're seeing in Hungary is quite different from what you've been seeing the last few days in Poland. Although both countries neighbouring the crisis in Ukraine, much more people seeking refuge in Poland. What's the story that you've been unfolding and uncovering in Hungary?
Yeah, hi Isabel. The story in Hungary is that the authorities are managing with the flow of people that are coming across the border from Ukraine, but there are differences with obviously coming into Hungary compared to entering Poland. For example, the language barrier as well, big difference when it comes to between Ukrainian and Hungarian compared to Ukrainian Polish, and then of course Hungary is a country that has been quite anti-immigration, anti-refugee for a number of years now. They dismantled the country's asylum system. There are only 2 processing centres, so they've had to kind of do a 360 and put in place systems for managing the flow of people that are leaving Ukraine. But they're doing very well, and in fact, where I'm standing talking to you now in Kishvarda, about 10 minutes or so from the border, it's a brand new tennis academy, and they've taken it over. And they've been bringing Ukrainians to stay here who are fleeing the conflict in the country. We can speak to one of them now, Tanya Borisova. Tanya, thanks for speaking to us. Really appreciate it. Just, first of all, what's it like staying here? Is it okay?
Yes, this is stay. All of us is okay. We take here about 2 hours post-media, and we have a breakfast, and we waiting for a bus about tomorrow, but we don't know. Maybe to Budapest, but we don't know. Yeah. Now we don't know. We have no more information.
Yeah, and you're from Kiev.
Yes.
You've come here with your son.
Yes, yes.
But also lots of other children.
Yes. I'm from Kiev. My son is studying at the Olympic College. He is an artistic gymnast. He training about 8 years, hard training, about 10 hours during a day, the hard work. And our children is here because the Putin. Because Putin leave our children, the children leave his parents. His parents don't know with him their children. Mm. We don't know his parents.
Yeah, yeah.
The children is all over Ukraine.
And the children,
and we don't know from which country, from which town these children. We don't know.
So the parents dropped the children off at the school, and then went off to fight in Ukraine and left you and a few other adults with.
Not me. At the Academy of Football in the village Dertsen, Transcarpathian region. He lived there. And we take these children with us, and
just one or two of you who are adults, and then lots and lots of children from across
and 52 children here. Yeah. But now 30 children went to the Budapest. This football. Yeah. But our children is artistic gymnastic, 3 children. One of them is my son. We stay here, and we waiting for more information when we are going. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after tomorrow. We don't know. Yeah. We want to our children that here in Hungary are training. Not only stay sleeping and eating, training. We hear only that he is training.
Yeah.
Because one moment.
That's okay. I'll tell you what. We'll show you the accommodation while Tanya just takes a moment. Actually, if we come in here, Tanya, you can come with us if you want. This is the accommodation that the Hungarians have provided for. This is one of the rooms. It's quite a new building, and these are the kids. That's Maxim there. Do you want to say hello, Maxim?
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. And how old are you?
I'm.
You're 12?
13 years old.
13 years old.
No,
okay.
12 years old.
12 years old. That's okay. And you do gymnastics?
I do gymnastics.
Yeah. And you.
This is my love.
This is your love, gymnastics, and you've come from Kiev?
Yeah.
And what was it like in Kiev?
I like going to train. I like.
It was
everyone.
I understand. Yeah, and all the kids are here. Do you want to say hello?
Hello.
Say hello. Here they are. Yeah. So, that's like gives you an idea. All these kids have got parents who've gone off to fight in Ukraine and have left them to be looked after by Tanya and a few other adults. Tanya, just very quickly, if you just come round, just tell us what's the situation like in Kyiv when you left?
The situation is very bad. We have no more eats in supermarkets. More difficult to take a rice, take a vegetables, take a meat. The clothes.
Okay. But there were so difficult to find food, and there were there were bombs and things like that as well, and it was scary.
Yes, and the situation is really very hard.
And your husband's fighting?
Yes,
fighting
not
for
fighting, stay in Kyiv, stay waiting,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you for speaking to us, really appreciate it. That's Sonia Borisov there, who's, along with a couple of other adults, they're looking after kids and they're trying to get them to somewhere safe, and they don't know where they're going to be going after tomorrow, and that's, as we've been hearing, it's a very similar story.
Yeah, and you know what's so striking always? You know, seeing kids laugh, even in tragedy, they're so resilient, aren't they? They are still just kids, and it's actually really great to see that. Paul, thank you so much for everything, all the coverage coming from Hungary, and there'll be lots more of it coming throughout the day here on GB News. See you later.
Well, if you have the endurance to stay with us, what we're going to do is to introduce you to Sir Ernest Shackleton's granddaughter, right? So that was his mission, that was on board Endurance. He was in Antarctica. They've now found his sunken ship. She'll tell us all about it after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Three people, including one child, have been killed in a maternity hospital bombing in Mariupol, according to the city's deputy mayor.
Very good morning to you. 9 o'clock's the time. It is Thursday, the 10th of March, and this is Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
We're live across the world, on TV, on radio and online, and this is what's leading the news this morning.
Ukrainian President Zelensky has described the Russian bombing of a maternity hospital that killed 3 as the ultimate proof of genocide against Ukraine.
It comes as US officials raise concerns that Russia could be setting the stage for the use of chemical weapons after Kremlin officials alleged that the US had been supporting a bioweapons program in Ukraine.
107 years after it sunk in the Antarctic Ocean, Sir Ernest Shackleton's ship Endurance has finally been found. We'll have the great explorer's granddaughter right here in the studio very shortly.
Send in any questions that you might have to her or any of your reactions to the stories we're talking about today by emailing gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can get in touch via Twitter at gbnews.
Hello there, and as you've been hearing, 3 people, including 1 child, have been killed in a maternity hospital bombing in Mariupol.
Well, meanwhile, many people fleeing the bombardment of Ukraine have headed towards Poland. Our reporter Bradley Harris has been catching up with one family from Spain who wanted to do their bit to help.
Over 2 million people have fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion 2 weeks ago. Poland shares a 310-mile border with Ukraine and has taken in the majority of Ukrainians. Aid efforts are largely operated by volunteers, and people from all over the world have come to join the cause. A family from Barcelona travelled 2 days by car to get to the main border crossing in Medica. Packed with supplies, they told me why. My best friend is Ukrainian, and between all my friends we arranged to collect items such as medicine, baby food and clothes. I come with my aunt to deliver what we have collected. We have spent 2 days travelling from Spain, and we have been in different parts of Poland where there are Ukrainian refugees. We have delivered packets of food for them. Adriana is from Ukraine and needs help finding a new life, but she's confident there is a brighter future in her country.
I think everything will be okay because I hope we have amazing future. We can stand up and be the best country.
Bradley Harris, GB News, Medica.
In touch this morning on the subject of refugees. Shelley says it's unfair how some blameless Russians are being tarred with the same brush as Putin. That was in relation to cancelling Tchaikovsky. She said this is absolutely pathetic and the worst kind of virtue signalling. Yvonne, a bit more cautious on her response to refugees. Obviously, the government has been coming in for lots of criticism for being lacking in humanity, in being very bureaucratic with the visas. She says this is a terrible situation for all refugees, but she says that if our government is taking a long time to issue visas in order to make sure the right people come into Britain, then that is the right thing to do. We all need to keep a level head on this. Media and other political parties need to understand how important it is to keep our country safe.
Also just want to say to you, a lot of you upset, distressed, angry about the fuel crisis and the price of petrol and diesel. I tell you, if this doesn't turn people to electric cars, nothing will, really, after this. Now, we were talking yesterday in the programme about boycotting Russian goods, and companies have been showing their solidarity with Ukraine by rebranding, like Chicken Kiev becomes Chicken Kyiv now in Sainsbury, and boycotting.
Yeah, and one such company is Stoli Vodka, formerly known as Stolichnaya. Damien McKinney is the CEO of the Stoli Group, and he joins us now. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm terribly sorry if I didn't. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Very well, very pleased to see you. Look, tell us why you decided a bit of a rebrand was needed.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of reasons. The first is, frankly, this is personal. Personal for me, personal for my team, personal for the founder. And when the invasion occurred on the 24th of February, there was no doubt about it in our minds that there's a moment for any company to make a stand. And you'll know we came out very, very quickly to say that this was absolutely the wrong thing for Putin and others to invade a sovereign nation. So when we then went through a period of then explaining to everybody, because as you said, there was a lot of emotion around all of this, we had to then explain to people that not only were we against the invasion, not only were we a Latvian brand, headquartered in Luxembourg, but also we were on the right side. It then made it a very simple decision, and actually it came organically from the team, that what we needed to do was actually made sure that everybody understood in very simple and clear terms, we're Stoli. Now, that didn't mean, and I want to really make this point, there is a danger that we, in a society where we tend to cancel things, you can't cancel your grandparents' recipe. We have the best vodka in the world. Why would we want to cancel that? Equally, you can't cancel people and say they're wrong. Particularly, we've got a lot of British people of Russian descent, etc., let alone Ukrainians, etc. But on the other hand, we needed to make it very clear which side we stood on, and therefore reducing it to Stoli hopefully makes that very, very clear to everybody.
Well, just a couple of things, Damien. Obviously, you see yourself as collateral damage in all of this, yeah?
Eamonn, it's an interesting point, and I've had that conversation with many people since. I was in the Royal Marines. I spent 18 years. I saw things in war and indeed was involved in running a refugee camp that I hope would never, ever be played off again in my life. I've seen it on the screens. There's a cost to peace. And I'm afraid there is a moment where you, in business, I believe there's a tension between talking about purpose and values and business. And you manage that tension. And I think this was a moment where there was no debate. There's a cost to peace. You accept that cost and you stand tall as, I believe, a trusted brand and as a company.
Damien, I was wondering, though, is there a cost to you in terms, I mean, now that you clear up this misunderstanding, how people perceive your brand, but do you export into Russia and therefore, as a result, will you be able to continue that?
Well, the two answers. Number one is no, we don't. And therefore, there's, from that point of view, well, there's no chance of us doing that going forward. I think, as I said, is there a cost to me personally or otherwise? We'll manage. We'll work our way through this.
Yeah.
Damien McKinney, we'll leave it there. Really good to hear you. You know what, I just wanted to finish on, obviously, a lot of people who watched Abs Fabs were used to Bolly and Stolly, so it was a very sensible rebrand because you're already kind of known in that name, but it gives you an opportunity to explain your background and how you are not associated with anything to do with the war machine that Putin is rolling from Moscow. Really good to get your thoughts this morning. Damien McKinney, CEO of the Stolly Group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. Well, this is an interesting interview coming up now because we're talking about an astounding discovery beneath the Antarctic ice, and we're talking about the ship that Sir Ernest Shackleton used to sail from Norway to the Antarctic, and it came to a sorry end because it was an icebreaker and they couldn't break enough ice, and the ice squeezed it and sunk it, basically. And we're going back to 1915. However, the crew got off.
Yeah, they were all able to escape that sinking ship because it happened very, very slowly. That creep from the ice was slow. But 107 years later, believe it or not, after the ship sank, the vessel has finally been discovered very, very deep in the bottom of the Weddell Sea.
Well, the shipwreck, now designated as a protected historic site and monument under the Antarctic Treaty, was found in what the discoverers recalled as remarkably good condition. Amazingly, in the studio with us now, Sir Ernest's granddaughter, Alexandra Shackleton, joins us now. Alexandra, it's lovely to be able to talk to you. It's lovely to be able to get this close. 100 years since your grandfather was buried last weekend. And then they find this. How are you feeling about that?
Well, first of all, I've always been told that there might not be anything to see because there is this amazing cine film of the ship breaking up, the masts crashing down, and people say, oh, just be a heap of spars. So I never thought there'd be so much of her. And it'd be so beautiful. The images are astoundingly beautiful. Third point is there's such wonderful condition. The portholes look as they've been cleaned.
Incredible. And apparently this has got to do with the ecosystem or the water, that there's a lack of microbes that would eat wood, for instance.
Exactly, and she was a wooden ship, of course, yes.
But as you saw from those pictures that we're showing there, it is 3,000 metres down, which is about what, Isabel?
Well, 10,000 feet, I
think. That's Titanic depth.
Yeah, a sperm whale would
Far too deep for humans.
Yeah. Right, so that's an interesting point. I mean, what do you want to happen to this pristine shipwreck now?
Well, perhaps I should say she belongs to me.
Yes.
She does.
Yeah.
She was insured, and the insurance company gave up their rights. And I wrote to the outfit looking, say, I've got no problem people photographing, wonderful, no rummaging, I said.
No rummaging?
No touching.
But is there not part of you that would be curious, that would want to see it on display somewhere?
You don't raise wrecks these days. I mean, the Mary Rose would never. I mean, she wasn't anything like as deep. You just leave them there and sort of photograph them. But what riches of photography! How incredible is that? How beautiful is that? Yeah. But this is all my life, because I didn't know my grandfather, you see. He was only 47 when he died. Yes. My father was only 10. But there's so much interest in him that I must have spoken in 16 countries so far.
Wow.
Yeah.
For one reason alone, his leadership, the way he led his men. That's why 100 years later, he's of so much interest.
Well, tell us about the leadership required. I often think of this, and I compare it to the Scott of the Arctic exhibit. He was in the Antarctic as well. Scott
Yes.
was in the Antarctic. He didn't make it back.
Scott did not know,
yeah.
so tragically.
So what about your grandfather? Why was he able to make it back?
Why? I think decisions he made. His first expedition's leader, Nimrod, the name of the ship, he and his men got within 97 miles of the South Pole. They would have been the first. But he knew that though they could probably get there, they would not have been in good enough health to get back. So he took a decision, it was described as one of the great decisions of polar history, to turn his back on possible glory for the sake of life. We're all defined by our priorities. His priorities were his men. And afterwards, my grandmother asked him about it, and he said, I thought you'd die. I thought you'd rather have a live donkey than a dead lion.
Very good. To tell me more about him, because I didn't know until today. Would you describe him as Irish? He was born in...
Well, he was born in Ireland,
Yeah.
and apparently he left when he was about 10, 11, and his father was a doctor. So he came to they lived in Sydenham. And my grandfather entered the Merchant Navy at the age of 16. His first pay was £1 a month.
Wow.
And these were the days of sailing ships, 150 mast, hold on. The expression was a hand for yourself, a hand for... Of course, it was the Queen, Victoria, in those days. And you were taught knots, so what they call the rope's end. The bosun would beat the apprentices if he got to a knot wrong. Sounds very brutal, but if people were pulling the wrong ropes in a storm, the ship can sink.
Critical job.
And he loved it. He loved his life. He started off with Scott, then his own expeditions.
Did you inherit that love of the sea?
Not really, but I have been to the Antarctic 5 times, so I'm very lucky.
Did you go to the site where you're... Because obviously,
I've been to his grave in South Georgia, yes. Yeah. It's nowhere like it.
Yeah.
And the first time I went there, because he was so remote, died at 47, it sounds a cliche, but I felt closer to him because I'd seen places he would have seen.
Yes.
And I know quite a lot about remotely. For instance, the only Antarctic explorer who wrote poetry, which has to be good, doesn't it? He was a great man for words and letters, but incredibly practical. He could do any job on an expedition, however menial.
Yes.
And he expected everybody to do that. In those days, it was unusual. The officers do one thing and the men another.
Yeah. Very unusual, and men now, like myself, speaking personally, are just useless to do anything.
Can't confirm.
Well, according to my wife, I can't do anything. But he was a bit of a celebrity, wasn't he? He was a bit of a rock star, really.
Yes.
In his time, to the point where he thought he could do a Boris, basically, and be elected on his popularity as an MP.
Oh, he did, yes. He did stand very briefly for the Liberal Unionists. And as he was a popular candidate, as he said, I got all the laughs, the other candidate got all the votes. I don't think it would have suited him to be an MP because he would have liked the constraints. But
yes.
He said once, when people said why, he said, one of his little sisters, talking about the Antarctic, you cannot think what it is like to tread where no one has trodden before. Where can you say that now?
Yeah, absolutely extraordinary what he achieved. He obviously died very young. You said he was 47 and his wife wanted for him to be buried down where he died.
So I've been to South Georgia,
Yeah, in South Georgia. But was that an unexpected death, or was that linked to the extreme conditions or the toll that he'd put his body through?
I think he'd, probably that. I think he'd had long-standing health problems. In those days, the leader could refuse to be examined. They probably couldn't now. Probably muck up your insurance. Of course, they wouldn't have insurance then, but he was happiest in his white South. The final aims of his expedition were a little bit vague, I have to say, but I think he wanted to get back to his beloved white South. And my grandmother chose him to be buried in South Georgia. He lies facing south, the graveyard.
Lovely. You are adamant you either can't or won't raise the Endurance.
She won't be raised.
She won't be raised. Do you have any memorabilia of your grandfather, or is there a museum dedicated to him or anything like that?
Most of the memorabilia are in the Scott Polar Research Institute in Cambridge or the Royal Geographical Society, which, by the way, has just opened a magnificent Shackleton exhibition. I heartily recommend it. But, so it opened at the beginning of February. Already 3,500 people have been to see it.
Wow.
Well, there'll be 3,502.
Good. It's
very
free.
short.
What I love
and children love it as well. Schools love it.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic now with this sort of finish to the story as well. And what an apt name, the Endurance. Nobody knew quite how much it was going to endure when that
You know why she's called Endurance? Because it's my family motto. Fortitudine vincumus, or by endurance you conquer if you didn't suffer Latin, yes.
Oh, very good.
Very good. Very good. And just talk us through, because this discovery was made on Saturday, and as Eamonn said at the beginning, this was the anniversary of, 100 years
since his
he was
death.
buried. Did you get a phone call from the team as soon as they made the discovery? What went through your mind when you heard from them?
I had a message from several people involved, but it was embargoed till the 7 o'clock news.
Oh, very good.
And all of this is going to make a TV documentary?
I believe so.
Yes.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Well...
And there's always been talk of a cine film. It's never happened. Many years ago, Paul Newman wanted to play, but I would have liked the idea. I always rather liked Paul Newman.
I bet, yeah.
But has he ever played anyone other than American? This would have been interesting, wouldn't it? Because I don't think he has.
Yeah, yeah.
Apparently, Tom Hardy's gone on record saying he wants to play him and produce the film.
And how would you feel about that?
I think that'd be great.
Yes,
but I only say about that, he's a great actor, but it's just as well in the film of Shackleton. He won't have to take his clothes off, because I bet these are massive tattoos, which grandfather would not have had.
Would not have approved of.
Not that, he wouldn't have had them. He would have been abused.
But he was a remarkably well-kept man, well-groomed. And
Yes.
just looking at some pictures here. Film star looks really
say, yes.
Yeah. So he'll be a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
Lovely talking to you,
So
Alexander.
lovely talking to both of you.
And thanks for making the time coming in today. And as Alexander said, I have seen that cine footage that she's talking about, where the ice closes in and the ship is crushed and then falls 3,000 metres straight down. But the pictures, when you see those, you'll be absolutely amazed. Thank you.
As my grandfather said, what the ice gets, the ice keeps.
Does it? Where was Endurance built?
Norway.
Ah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Very good.
Well, Alexandra Shackleton, granddaughter of Sir Ernest Shackleton. Absolute pleasure to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got to leave you now because we've got to go to Crufts Dog Show.
Oh, your life is so glamorous. You haven't got to judge dogs, have you?
Well, I've got a rescue dog, a adopted dog, which is nice, really lovely. But this is all
Never been to Crufts.
the purebred. We only have a mongrel. These are all these purebreds.
Smart dog.
Smart. So we're doing that. We're going to be live from the dog show at Crufts in Birmingham as it kicks off. No, we do it by technology these days. It's
you pretend you're
we'll do it directly. Don't you worry about that.
Not like what your grandfather had to go through, but anyway.
No, sometimes I have to explain to people there were no communications whatsoever.
No WhatsApp, video,
They did take a
FaceTime.
radio with them, but it was too far away.
Too far to make any difference.
Yeah.
Okay. We're off to Birmingham after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
(21:09). The bit of breaking news here: the Chelsea Football Club owner Roman Abramovich is the latest Russian oligarch to be added to the UK sanctions list.
Yeah, there's been a lot of pressure to do this. You remember PMQs last week, Sir Keir Starmer asking the Prime Minister exactly why that hadn't happened already. Well, we're hearing now the government has announced that it had imposed asset freezes on Abramovich, as well as 3 other Russians, after they were added to the country's sanctions list. A spokesperson for the Russian this morning has said that she cannot comment immediately on that announcement. But suffice to say, he's put his club up for sale. He's fled to Moscow.
Yeah.
He knows
what
it's
happens
coming.
now with the sale of Chelsea probably still stays in the hand of the foundation.
Well, there's lots of property associated with them as well, lots of private assets. We'll be getting to the bottom of exactly what that means. And yeah, it's interesting. The government have finally decided to go after Abramovich. That breaking news for you. Should we take a look at what people are saying this morning on some of the subjects we've been talking about? Lots of messages in about the refugee crisis. Again, the update, the breaking line this morning is that the Home Office is looking again at trying to make the bureaucracy a little bit less slow on these visas, people trying to get in. Al Moore says, whilst I agree we need to help refugees with families in this country, we must control the numbers coming and consider security risks. Glenn argues, we've always been a country of caring, warm-hearted people, but I do think that people would be more welcoming with regard to refugees if the government actually dealt with illegal immigration across the channel. It's a real shame that the people fleeing war are paying the price for the problems of illegal immigration across the channel.
Are we going to Crufts or not? Oh, we still haven't got them up, but that's good.
That's why I'm padding.
Oh, no, sorry. I just thought there was a lot of news just coming in there.
We were chatting to Alexandra Shackleton
She is the
break.
granddaughter of Sir Ernest Shackleton.
She's amazing, wasn't she?
His Antarctic expedition on the ship Endurance, 100 years after his death, the ship has been discovered, but she is truly amazing.
She really was.
They don't make them like that anymore.
They don't.
We were talking to her for 5 or 6 minutes, and basically at the end of it there, she said, "When will this be going out?" We were trying to tell her.
Well, she also started getting up to walk out whilst we were still talking, but we'll make sure we send her a copy.
She was full of enthusiasm.
Fizzing, I'd say.
Yeah, and so many stories to tell. And as I say, they just don't make them like that anymore. And that connection she had with history, and there you see the images off the ship itself. So it's 10,000 feet under the water, 3,000 metres there. Apparently, there's very few living things at all that can survive down there. Whales can't survive.
Yeah.
A lot of fish can't survive.
Submarines can't go down there. I mean, what's extraordinary as well, the story is just too perfect, really. It's exactly 100 years to the day that Sir Ernest Shackleton was buried that they found the Endurance.
I think you may find that was a wee bit held up.
Oh, really? Wink, wink.
Let's hold the pictures
They're describing it as a milestone of polar history.
Yeah, but the thing, films on these things, like, like Scott of the Antarctic, they're absolutely amazing. And she was saying there is cine film available of the ship, the Endurance, actually being crushed by the ice and sinking. I have seen this, and it's, you look at it and you go, wow, you just sort of can't believe this.
But what I think was a breaking line exclusively, hopefully we can do some digging afterwards, whether or not she said that before anywhere, is that this ship belongs to her. And she's told them, keep your paws off my ship, because the Shackleton family were named in the insurance of the ship.
Yeah.
And she said that she does not want to see it raised. So we were speculating earlier, if they do, it could take 50 years or so to get it up. If they do that, where would it go? Well, she has said this morning, nowhere.
Well, I assume it takes 50 years. It would take 50 years to get it up, because you've got to get equipment down there.
That's
and you've
right.
got to, bit by bit, in case it decays or degenerates or crushes on the way up quite gently. So maybe it wouldn't be worthwhile, but it is absolutely incredible to see, and there will be a documentary on the whole fate of the Endurance as well.
Unfortunately, we're not going to get to Crufts today. We'll maybe get there tomorrow. That is it from us today, this morning. In fact, that's it for us this week. You've got Friday off this week, haven't you?
Seriously.
So we'll be back Monday
Seriously, I forgot about
morning,
that.
6 o'clock. Up next, though, Tom Harwood is going to keep you right up to date on everything that's happening with the briefing.
See you soon. Thanks for watching.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern. It's a sunny start in places this morning, but there will be further showers at times through the rest of the day. It will, however, be less windy compared with yesterday. A weather front that